Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're starting part 1 of an awesome What If Deku was adopted by All Might, Aizawa, and Sir Nighteye story. If you want to see part 2, drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Now let's jump into the story. It happened on a Tuesday. Tuesdays were usually boring. Nothing exciting ever happened on a Tuesday. Tuesdays were reserved for catching up on the chaos that Mondays left in their wake, and generally, it was the unofficial paperwork day. Rarely do any crimes happen, something Detective Naomasa Tsukochi was eternally grateful for. But, unfortunately, some Tuesdays decide to break the mold. And today was apparently going to be one hell of a Tuesday. He almost did not notice his approach. Sir Nighteye, Mirai Sasaki, was certainly recognizable, sure, but only if you looked directly at him. His talent for blending into crowds as just another businessman was invaluable for information gathering, and this fact plus the man's unique quirk had led to many of their cases being solved without any of the criminals or villains being any the wiser. But today was, of course, different. And by different, he meant that the straight-laced, no-nonsense pro-hero approached his office with a very small child perched on his hip. Said child clung tightly to the hero's jacket, glancing around the room warily, leaning in closer to the hero whenever a cop passed by just a touch too close. While still out of range for him to hear, he could see Mirai speaking in soft tones, his words helping calm the boy who looked up at him with practical stars in his eyes. If the detective did not know any better, he would think the boy might be a relative of Mirai's. The dark green curls the boy sported were certainly the same rare shade, but the unruly mess of curls was nothing like the pin-straight strands of the hero, and rather than golden irises, the boy had an even brighter shade of green than his hair. But he also noticed how thin and pale the boy looked. Carefully lowering the child into the chair next to Naomisa's office, Mirai knelt in front of the boy, speaking softly once again, though the detective could make out a faint. "Will just be a moment." A shaky nod of his head from the boy, and Mirai rose from the ground, gently resting a hand atop the boy's head before moving into the detective's office and quietly shutting the door. Grabbing his now cold cup of coffee, the detective greeted the hero by commenting, "Something tells me I'm gonna need something stronger than coffee for this." Sir Nighteye was as straight-laced as they come. Despite his appreciation for humor, he was a strict, to-the-letter sort of hero that never, absolutely never, deviated from his usual moral code. So, as the detective took a giant gulp of his cold coffee, he can easily justify his reaction to the prose words and the truth that pinged in his head as the man spoke them. "I am currently plotting a homicide." The detective spat the disgusting coffee all across his desk. It was just supposed to be a normal goddamn Tuesday. Sir Nighteye felt that the blame belonged to Toshinori. Not that he particularly regretted his actions, but the number one hero was the one who started this whole endeavor, so if he was going down, he would drag the symbol of peace down with him. It had all started after the battle. A battle that was decades, no, centuries in the making. All Might had told him the story, had told him the history behind his extraordinary power, the power known as One for All. And the story behind All for One. He had known that the battle between the two men would come to pass, about the sacrifices that might be made, but he had not let himself think about the potential fallout. Toshinori barely survived. Nighteye had tried to peer into the man's future, to ascertain whether or not he would survive, but everything was just too jumbled, too indecipherable to read. It left him an utter wreck, nearly breaking him, were it not for the fact that his mentor, his friend, managed to survive despite the odds. And then the man woke up and immediately tried to drag himself out of his hospital bed, with still healing near-fatal wounds, and so had his first thoughts about committing homicide. "Just where do you think you are going?" he asked in a quiet, venomous tone that made the injured hero physically flinch. "I have things I need to do." He let out an audible sigh as he moved to push the oaf back into the hospital bed. "The only thing you need to do is rest." His friend was clearly disgruntled at the idea. "I can't, Mirai. I've already been out too long." He tried to move around Nighteye, but the sidekick wouldn't budge. "I need to find him." That got Nighteye's attention. "Find who?" "All for One is no more, Toshinori." "You won dash, I know. It's not him I'm looking for." "Then who?" The man seemed to hesitate, as if he weren't sure how to reply, but Mirai pressed. Who is it? His son. I need to find All for One's son. And that's when Toshinori finally explained what had happened during the battle. How he had arrived to find All for One in the midst of arguing with a woman, how she was pleading with him, how he soon ascertained that this woman was his wife, and how she had just discovered the horrifying truth about her husband. How she threatened to never let All for One near their son again. All Might tried to intercept the two, but he was too far away, too slow, not enough. Sharp spikes pierced the young woman before he even had a chance to save her, and all he had were moments of the woman dying in his arms, begging him to stop her husband, to end his tyranny. To protect her son. Don't let that monster take him. Protect him. Please, protect my child. Protect. Izuku. She took her last breath, and the fight began. Mirai did not need the play-by-play of the fight, with Toshinori only offering bits about how All for One spoke of how he planned to craft the boy, the child, into his successor. How the child was his, and the only being truly deserving to exist at his side and not beneath him. He's so intelligent, so brilliant. He will make a worthy adversary for you, one day. I just need to break him a little bit more to have him fit the mold I'm creating for him. Even if I die today, he will be my legacy. Mirai had known that All for One was sick and twisted and the epitome of evil, but this. I have to find him, Mirai. Toshinori practically begged. I have to find him before one of All for One's subordinates do. There is no telling the plans he's crafted for the child. We have to protect him. I know, Toshinori, I know, but you can't help right now, Mirai pleaded. When his friend tried to interject, he continued. You are too injured to assist, and besides, this is not your area of expertise. You cannot simply run around the country shouting for the boy and expect to find him. That, at the very least, got the man to stand down a bit, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Then what do? You get back in that hospital bed and rest. Leave the search to me. And thus, after interrogating him for details about the woman and taking only the child's name with him, Nighteye set out on his near-impossible search. And for a while, it did seem as if it were impossible. He discovered the mother's identity fairly quickly, her body being dug out of the wreckage in the aftermath of the fight, Izuku Midoriya. And subsequently, he found the identity of the boy. 7-year-old Izuku Midoriya. But then, it was as if the boy disappeared. No proper reports were filed, and were it not for the minor blip in a police report that the boy had been collected from his school the day after his mother's death, how the boy ended up at school without his mother or father present was another concern. He would have assumed that he had already been taken by All for One's associates. He spent countless hours grilling the police and teachers involved, but unfortunately, another fact about the child made things complicated. What do you mean he's just some quirkless kid? Nighteye asked in a low, threatening tone. The teacher at least had the decency to look nervous about the comment, but she just doubled down. I mean, I just don't know why you are putting so much effort into finding him. He is a child. An innocent child who deserves just as much help as any other living being, no matter his quirk status. Not that your ability to change your nail color gives you much bragging room. The woman looked ready to snap back at him, but he cut her off. Regardless, I will be making sure to pursue an investigation into your school about this blatant quirk discrimination. Now, if you will excuse me. He rose and moved to storm out of the room, not deigning to give the shell-shocked woman another glance. I have better places to spend my time. It damn near broke his heart to see how easily the boy had been shoved aside in the world just because he did not possess a quirk. As if he were not worth anyone's time. The idea that they might lose the boy not because of All for One's actions but simply because the world refused to protect an innocent child. He pressed on with his search. But finally, after endless searching and a month's worth of dead ends, he found him. He discovered the boy had been deposited at a foster home, and within the hour, he had the foster family's file on hand and headed out to the address. And then he suddenly felt the urge to commit homicide for a second time. The boy was living in a goddamn closet, Neamosa. A closet. Nighteye was seriously close to shouting, barely restraining himself for fear of the child outside hearing him. He's severely malnourished, has not had a proper bath in days, and is beyond traumatized. And those utter wastes of air had the audacity to say he should be grateful that they took him in at all. The detective scowled, leaning forward to drag his laptop closer. Can you give me some names? I can get the case against them pushed through and have them arrested for neglect by the morning. Nighteye pulled a whole file from his suit somehow before handing it over. This is everything on the Foster family. Good. After taking the file, he raised a brow and asked, I'm assuming you enacted emergency foster protocol for the kid. All licensed heroes had the ability to temporarily take custody of children in emergency situations, so long as they could provide a reasonable excuse later. All Might's agency is already filing the paperwork for me. Glancing towards the door, he sighed. I will likely file for an extension on it as well. That certainly got the detective's attention. You want to keep the kid? He is a good child, Nighteye reasoned. Very smart and intelligent. You should have heard him talking about heroes. His analysis of them was just. The wistful smile that had grown on his face quickly dropped. But seeing how he's been treated for being quirkless, I cannot in good faith simply put him back into the foster system. That had the detective nodding agreement. Yeah, the quirkless face a lot more hate than any other quirk group, surprisingly. The statistics aren't pretty. His gaze darted to the boy nervously shifting in his chair outside of the office. Especially for children. Then he stays with me, temporarily. At least until I find a safe home for him, Nighteye declared resolutely. Then, he rose from the chair. I would like to get him looked at by a doctor. Say no more, Nemosa replied. I will handle this, you take care of the kid. Just send me their reports, and I will talk to the boy another day about everything. Watching the hero leave with a simple nod, he kept his eyes locked on the man as he moved to Izuku. The child lit up immediately upon sight of the hero and latched tightly to the man after being picked up. He could practically hear the excited chatter from the boy as Mirai politely nodded along, carrying the child out of the department as if it were the most normal thing in the world. The detective let out an amused snort. Temporary my butt. That kid will be adopted by the end of the week. Mirai Sasaki had quickly ascertained two facts about Izuku Midoriya. One is that the boy was undeniably and quite terrifyingly brilliant, especially when it came to quirks. The child recognized him within seconds and pelted the man with so many theories and questions about his quirk that his head spun. All of the insights were spot on, and several of the questions were aspects he had not even truly thought about. While a small part of him had hoped that the boy would not be as intelligent as All for One had boasted about, Nighteye very quickly realized that the villain might have actually been being modest about the boy. The second fact about the boy was that Izuku was severely traumatized. While Mirai did not mind the incessant muttering of the boy, finding it both amusing and astounding, the muttering was swiftly cut short by the miserable excuse of a human being who called themselves a foster parent. Stop harassing him with that stupid babbling, brat. You freak people out. And oh, as he watched the light dim from this innocent child's eyes, he remembered he had a homicide to plot. After much subtle threatening towards the foster parent and even more quiet, comforting words to the now sniffling Izuku, he left with the child perched on his hip and an order to the foster parent to expect to hear from the police in the next few days. Izuku spoke quietly after that, making comments like, I don't want to bother you, or is it okay if I... The amount of coaxing he was forced to do to get the boy comfortable with him again nearly broke his heart, but thankfully, he managed to convince the child that no, he did not bother him and that yes, he enjoyed his questions. The boy looked at him as if he hung the moon and the stars, and Mirai found himself at a loss over how to respond. He had never been a very good people person. Everyone always found his personality too stiff, despite his appreciation for humor and light-hearted banter. Many just did not see him well enough to understand. But, thankfully, Izuku did. And if that did not melt his heart even more, he wasn't sure what would. Now, here he sat in the hospital, watching closely as the nurse took Izuku's vitals and calmly asked for BLD samples. Izuku reluctantly agreed, on edge the entire time. When Nighteye had asked about his discomfort, Izuku softly replied, The last doctor I met told me I was quirkless. They left shortly after. Exhaustion was clearly setting in for the boy who could barely keep his head up, and Mirai was suddenly hit with the panicked thought of I have absolutely no clue how to care for a child. Realizing his dilemma, he made the executive decision to head to the agency to stay tonight rather than his apartment. It's not as if his room at the agency wasn't more lived in than his actual apartment, due to his workaholic tendencies, as All Might put it. As if he had room to talk, Mr. I just nearly died, so let me go search Japan half dead for a child I don't know with no help. Thank heavens that recovery girl hit him with her cane when she found out and all but strapped him to the hospital bed. Besides, a benefit of going to the agency. You mean I can have one of these? Smiling softly at the shell-shocked child, he fondly replied, you can have as many of them that you want. And that's how Mirai ended up spending the end of a very long Tuesday comforting the child of his friend's semi-immortal and now dead archenemy over the fact that he can have as many free limited edition All Might Honours as he wanted. Toshinori expected today to be rather dull. The past month had been a mixture of dull and routine, mixed with random bouts of immense guilt. He knew that focusing on his recovery was important, that this should be his priority, but all it did was leave him feeling completely and utterly useless. He defeated All for One, his archenemy, the monster that had destroyed so many lives in his quest for power. Yet even with the man dead, there was still the aftershocks of his reach to deal with, such as the young, innocent boy known as Izuku Midoriya. His heart broke thinking about the boy. How could their society lose track of him so easily? How could he just fall through the cracks and no one bat an eye? Remembering his own childhood, he knew that being quirkless set one at a disadvantage compared to the rest of the quirked population, but he had not known it had grown this bad. And here he was, sitting in this hospital bed, useless, while this poor boy was out somewhere, alone, with no one to protect him. Possibly. For all he knew, the boy could be safe and well, just lost in the computer system due to a glitch and not because their entire society had failed him. He liked to think himself an optimist, but the quirkless statistics he had been Googling over the past month sought to test that optimism. Sighing for what was likely the 5th time that day, he felt it mildly justified that he was so lost in thought to not notice the man who entered the room and cleared his throat. The high-pitched shriek was justified too. Sir Nighteye simply stared at the hero, arms clasped behind his back with a single brow raised. Your situational awareness is still as atrocious as ever, Toshinori. Clutching at his chest, All Might let out a surprised chuckle. Most people cannot sneak up on me the way you do, Mirai. With a warm smile, he then asks, how has the investigation been? It's been nearly 2 weeks since I have seen you. His friend seemed to straighten his shoulders even more, his face giving away nothing and kept carefully blank. There has been a development. That certainly got Yagi's attention. Do you believe that you are well enough for a visitor? Of course, he all too quickly replied. Anything to help. With a small smile and a look that screamed that Mirai was purposefully leaving out details, his sidekick quickly schooled his expression. Very well, let me go retrieve him. And before Yagi could question him about this visitor, his friend was out the door, leaving Yagi to stew in wonder. Thankfully, he only had to wait maybe a minute, hearing Mirai's return, along with him speaking softly to someone else. He could barely make out him saying, "Just remember, he is still recovering," before he finally stepped through the doorway, leading the smallest, most precious boy All Might had ever seen at his side. Now, All Might had seen the boy's file along with several pictures, but nothing could prepare him for the boy in real life. He had the same green hair and eyes of his mother, only his eyes seemed so much brighter, and his hair being a giant mess of untamable curls. His face was covered in a smattering of freckles, and he was oh so tiny and fragile looking. But the thing that struck Yagi the most was how thin and nervous the poor boy seemed. That is, until realization dawned on the boy, staring at Yagi like he was the most amazing thing in the universe. And then the boy promptly shrieked and fainted on the spot. And Yagi nearly choked when Mirai caught the now unconscious child and deadpanned. I really should have seen that coming. Once Mirai finished explaining the situation to Yagi, he finds himself very glad that the man is confined to bed rest. Yagi, you cannot commit any homicide. The man, their country's symbol of peace, seemed to actually pout about that. But you told Naomisa that you were plotting it. He sighed heavily. Plotting is different than committing. One is stress relief, and the other involves jail time. Only if you're caught dash. For the love of God, Yagi dash. Okay, okay. The man quickly relented, sinking down into the hospital bed. They are at the very least getting some jail time, correct? Nighteye gave him a look before saying, of course they are. Naomasa is helping to fast-track the case. In the meantime, the boy is in my custody. The usually stoic man then spied a glance at the small child curled up asleep in the chair beside him. They had a nurse check him over immediately after he fainted, and they were assured that the excitement and exhaustion of the past 24 hours had likely just caught up to him. Mirai had suspected that Izuku did not sleep well last night, and this confirmed it. Yagi's face was carefully blank as he stared at the small child, trying very hard to process how small and fragile he looked, how anyone could ever look at him with anything other kindness and affection. What will happen to him? I will take responsibility of him for now, Mirai began, resisting the temptation to reach out and ruffle the boy's curls. Eventually, we will have to find another home for him. No. Head whipping towards the pro, Nighteye openly gaped at him. What do you mean no? I mean that we cannot just send him to someone else, All Might elaborated, straightening in the hospital bed. He should stay with us. In what world is that a good idea? He hissed back, trying to keep his voice down as to not wake the boy. I will admit that yes, I am fond of him, and yes, I want to keep him, but it isn't safe. And sending him anywhere else is. Yagi snapped, his face showing a rare moment of true anger. Mirai, you and I both know that this boy will be hunted, and we have already seen that society itself tried to abandon him. Yes, with us there is a risk, but at least with us, we can easily keep him safe. We can protect him. Sasaki's mind was spinning, trying to come up with a decent argument against this, but he knew he was screwed. All Might was in one of those headsets where nothing could sway the stubborn oaf, and it did not help that he wanted to keep the child close as well. Slumping in defeat, he meekly rebuffed, Yagi, we know nothing about raising a child. He did not know if it was a good thing or not to see the pro visibly brighten after that. Have no need to fear. I know exactly who to ask. This is going to be a terrible idea. Toshinori. The tone Mirai used was one that clearly suggested that the man was trying his best to be patient with his friend. I am sorry to say this, but that is an absolutely terrible idea. Somehow, the man in question managed to look both sheepish and offended. He has experience with children. Experience meaning the man drop-kicked you into the wall on a daily basis during your time at UA, the other deadpanned. It wasn't that bad you literally start shaking when you mention the man. Look All Might sighed heavily, running his hands across his face as he focused on what to say. I know he is rough around the edges, but I wouldn't suggest him if I thought he might upset young Izuku in the slightest. The man tough with me because he needed to be. I needed that kind of training. He's immensely patient with children. Nighteye did not look convinced. And how sure of that are you? He was Nana's closest friend, Mirai, All Might said solemnly, staring at his hands. He knew her children before she hid them away. He won't say it, but losing the children hurt him badly. He cared for them. At this, the sidekick's eyes softened. All right, you made a good point. And the man is rather practical. Shaking his head, Nighteye continued. We will have to tell him anyway, or else he'd likely strangle you. But still, I think I know someone better suited to ask for Izuku's specific needs. Before the hero could ask, a soft yawn broke through their conversation, and both watched as the tiny boy curled up in the hospital chair began to shift. Uncurling himself and shifting to a seated position, the boy adorably rubbed his eyes with his fist, his gaze dazed from sleep. All Might let out a chuckle at the adorable sight, which drew the attention of the sleep-dazed child. Green eyes stared at him, squinted carefully, then flew wide open with a startled shriek. All Might. Yagi could not help the deep belly laugh that followed, grinning widely at the awestruck child. Hello, Izuku my boy. How are you feeling? Jumbled words began to spill from Izuku, his arms flailing in the air as he tried to process the sight in front of him. Looking to Nighteye, who was doing his best to hide his amusement, he whispered, Is it really him? Yes, Izuku, Nighteye replied kindly, reaching out to gently pat the top of the boy's head. He is going to be helping me to take care of you. At this, the boy's face dropped, and Mirai panicked. Did he say something wrong? They had been running off of the assumption that the child would want to stay with them, but thinking now, perhaps that would not be the case, but he could not imagine why. The boy spoke softly, eyes falling to his bright red shoes. But why would you both waste your time on me? Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes, and he looked up at them and forced the most heartbreaking smile on his face. Tich, there are other kids who deserve your help more. It's okay, I understand. A hiccuping sob broke through as he swiftly dropped his head and wrapped his arms tightly around his knees. I don't mind, promise. Yagi felt like someone had gut-punched him right in the hole in his side. Oh, Izuku, shifting in the hospital bed as best he could, he spoke more softly than he usually did, more carefully. You are just as worthy of help as any child. The boy wouldn't meet his eyes, shaking almost violently in the chair. He sobbed, tears finally spilling over. But I'm quirkless. And that does not make you any less than anyone else. The boy froze, eyes wide in shock, which Yagi cursed whoever fed into making a child think he was less than others, as if he was below deserving human decency. Ah, really? The boy asked in a small voice, tears slowing. Yes, my boy. Carefully reaching out from the hospital bed, he pats Izuku on the head, earning himself a starry-eyed look of shock from the child. You deserve to have others care for your well-being. And despite the pain in his side, Yagi did not mind when the boy all but launched himself at him, hugging the boy close as he cried into his chest. Yes, he was sure now. There was no way he would let this child go. Gran Torino. Yagi visibly winced as the voice on the screen shouted at him. It seemed like a good idea. Honestly, Toshi, what were you thinking? His friend asked in exasperation. I get that the man trained you and isn't as much of a hard-ass as he tries to let everyone believe, but even he would question your sanity of asking him for help. I have been shown the error of my ways, David. Shaking his head with a sigh, he mumbles, why do you think I usually let you and Mirai make logistical decisions? Chuckling to himself, Shield leaned back in his chair on the screen, grinning in amusement at the symbol of peace's embarrassment. At least you can admit it. At Yagi's squawk of protest, he laughed and waved off the man. Calm down, Toshi. We will get this handled. Now, tell me about the kid, beyond the tragic familial history. A small, warm smile broke across the pro's face. He is simply fantastic. So intelligent and analytical that it's enough to make my head spin. He has such a passion for quirks and heroes, and the way he lights up about them, please tell me he is an All Might fan. He may have passed out when meeting me. Oh God, I shouldn't laugh, Shield began, barely keeping his snickering in check. Mirai did not have any clothes for the boy when he found him, and he let Izuku choose from the merch storage at the agency. He said the boy started crying over it all. Then, with a fond look, he added, and, oh, he is kind. He's such a kind and bright and hopeful boy despite the world doing nothing to deserve him. At that, the grin on Shield's face slipped. Toshinori. What happened to him? I've grown rather detached over the years from how the public reacts to the quirkless, David. He saw the way his friend stiffened. The world has been cruel to him. After a bit of silence, David swore under his breath. I know that Melissa is lucky, getting to grow up here on Island. No one cares about quirks as much, just developing tech. Quirks don't matter unless it's something that needs gear for. But I've read the statistics. It's not pretty. It took 2 days for the foster system to lose track of him, and the foster family he ended up with treated him like he was worthless. They made him live in a closet, David. A closet. Yagi's hands shook as he spoke. And when Mirai and I told him that we were going to take care of him, he thought we were wasting our time. A 7-year-old child thought that being properly cared for was a waste of time. That he did not deserve our help. Toshi. Dragging his hands across his face, he bluntly stated, you need to find that kid a therapist. He just lost his mom and went through a month of severe neglect. Not to mention, if the statistics are right, he went through more with his school and peers before all of this. I know you always want to be the one to fix everything, but this is something that you cannot personally fix. Slumping, the hero sighed. I know, you are right. It's something we will need to add to everything else to set up. Pinching the bridge of his nose, he groaned. I completely forgot about school, though. He hinted to Mirai that his last school had not been very kind to him. I doubt any school would be much different than his old one. Perhaps homeschooling. Neither of you are in a place where you can maintain homeschooling, and hiring a regular tutor is going to be difficult, Shield added, his tone mulling over it all. I would offer to have him sent here with me, but I'm already stretching the rules by having Melissa, and also, the boy trusts you. I don't think it's wise to separate him from both of you. Besides, if his father is who you say he is, he needs to be close by to you and other heroes who are aware of the situation. Then what should we do? You need schooling, therapy, and hero protection for him, Shield listed out as if it was simple, but judging by the grin on his face, it was actually that simple. You need to take him to a place that not only offers all three, but also might be crazy enough to help you. When Mirai Sasaki had requested a meeting with him on behalf of All Might, Nezu had been thoroughly intrigued. When the situation had been further explained over a cup of tea, however, he could easily admit that he had not been expecting the scenario laid out before him. So, All for One has a son, the rat hybrid murmured, his beady eyes lost in thought. One that he wished to be his successor. Despite the boy being quirkless, his involvement in the child's life suggests that he had every intention of molding the boy into a villain serving at his side. Though the boy himself is overall oblivious to it. From the sounds of it, All for One was already grooming that child. Before you met him. Mirai frowned. He was not doing a good job at it. From what we know of Izuku, the boy is fascinated with heroes and quirks, almost to an obsessive level. The hero worship would not allow for the boy to be a prime candidate for villainy. The boy being quirkless is exactly why it would be so easy to craft the boy into someone that would blindly follow him. Sitting the cup down, he continued. Minorities, especially those treated as horrifically as the quirkless, often turn to crime out of necessity rather than choice. But throw in the boy's hero worship. His longing to be a hero in an industry that would easily crush those hopes in favor of flashier quirks. Throw in some well-placed comments from heroes he admired, and you have the perfect recipe of how to make a bright and heroic child snap. As the words processed, Mirai looked horrified. He wanted to crush his own child's hopes and dreams in order to turn him against heroes. He could even twist the boy's thoughts into believing that turning to villainy would be more heroic than actually becoming a legal hero. Tail flicking behind him, he scowled. I hate those who use others as pawns for their own games. Nighteye's gaze settles on the hybrid scar. Shaking his head, the principal plastered on a cheery, fake smile. No matter. The boy is ours, and we shall ensure that he is raised in an environment worthy of his kind nature. Now, I know that UA is meant to be a high school, but I can certainly see about some of the teachers volunteering time to teach him various subjects. And Hound Dog is a wonderful therapist, and hopefully the idea of having a pro be the one to discuss his issues will help open Izuku to the idea of therapy. You are very quick to accept this, Nighteye replied, a hint of surprise in his tone. I thought for sure you would have to at the very least run this by the school board first. Nonsense. This is a special case. Besides, the rat's grin grew slightly more predatory for a brief second. If you think this boy is intelligent, then he is certainly someone that could possibly make a wonderful personal student for myself. The board would never deny me that. Nighteye briefly wondered if this might be a terrible mistake. Now, all we have to do is fill out some paperwork. The door slammed open, causing the pro to launch to his feet in a defensive stance, ready to fight. But instead of finding an enemy, he found a familiar face. Eraserhead. The man in question blinked in surprise. Oh, Sir Nighteye. It's been a while. Before Mirai could even begin to question what the Erasure hero was doing in here, the man turned his attention towards the principal. Who do I have to fight to keep the little green-haired kid in the teacher's lounge? I beg your pardon. Dull red eyes turned back to him. The kid, the one drowning in All Might's CRP, Izuku. I will fight someone to keep him. Mirai's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on his walking cane. Are you sure about that? You would have to fight myself. And All Might. Aizawa blinked. Did I stutter? Nezu let out an amused hum. Today is certainly an interesting day. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧𝙮 Aizawa liked to think that he could react well to whatever life throws at him. At worst, he thinks that he can at the very least hide his reaction behind a careful facade of nonchalance. This has served him well in his first year teaching at UA. Despite being only 23, he commanded an authority over his class that was rarely questioned, and only a few months into the year, his class was already leaps and bounds ahead of the other heroic students. They still had a lot to work on, but Aizawa believes that they all still have some potential. They at least know better than to slack off, seeing as how Nezu gave him free rein on expulsions. That being said, Aizawa still kept his class at a distance. Most respected him to some degree, but none were particularly friendly. And that's fine with him. He doesn't exactly give off the aura of someone who got along with children. Most were too nervous around him, and others were actually scared, especially when faced with his quirk. But again, this is fine. He is only here to teach them how to survive. Nothing more, nothing less. So, considering his lack of skill when it came to interacting with his own students beyond keeping them from dying in the field, it was safe to say that he had no idea how to react upon finding an even tinier child sitting on the couch in the staff room, alone. The boy in question was so very, very small. Dressed head to toe in All Might merch, he fidgeted nervously on the couch, hands clenched tightly in front of him, muttering softly under his breath. His head was covered in the curliest dark green hair that he had ever seen, and his cheeks were smothered in a smattering of freckles framing two large, vividly green eyes. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧𝙮 might be a heartless bstrd at times, but even he had to admit that the boy was adorable. And judging by how quickly the boy's head whipped towards him after he entered the room, the kid had a good handle on spatial awareness. Which could be not the best thing for a child to have to develop, but he pushed down any worries for now. Hey kid, he began carefully, shifting his goggles on top of his head as he made his way towards the couch. What are you doing in here? The boy barely seemed to hear him, his eyes slowly growing wider as the seconds tick by. Aizawa is about to cautiously prompt him again, but then the boy quietly, almost reverently whispers, "Eraserhead," and then he promptly bursts into tears. Hellions chat, let me sleep a minute. Guys, let me sleep a minute. Guys, someone come help me, let me sleep a minute. I don't know what to do, Sonic. Wait, is this an emergency? Night, 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧𝙮, are you okay? Screm, is it an attack? Where are you? Let me sleep a minute. I'm fine, let me sleep a minute. Just freaking out, let me sleep a minute. How the F do I comfort a sobbing child? Sonic, I Screm, hey, you gave me a demon heart attack. Night. Did you make your class cry again? You usually aren't bothered by that. Let me sleep a minute. No, it is not my class. Let me sleep a minute. There is a very small, unidentified child in the teacher's lounge. Let me sleep a minute. He just let me sleep a minute. He looked at me and started crying. Screm, insert wheezing laugh. Sonic, I can't breathe. Sonic, your face made a child cry. Let me sleep a minute. This is not helping. Let me sleep in. He's still crying and won't let go of my leg. Night. Wait, so he isn't afraid of you. Let me sleep a minute, I guess. Let me sleep a minute. He whispered my hero name and then started crying and ran over and grabbed my leg, and now I'm awkwardly patting his head while texting you idiots to come help me. Sonic, oh boy. Screm, show, the boy is a fan. Let me sleep a minute. What, let me sleep a minute? Oh, let me sleep a minute. Oh God. Taking a calming breath, Aizawa tucked away his phone while glancing down at the mystery child. The crying was finally seeming to subside, though the boy's tiny frame still shook violently between raspy sobs. Heart clenching, the pro did his best to drag forth whatever bits of kindness and patience laid in his cold, dead heart for the kid. Kneeling slowly, he let a hand rest on the boy's shoulder, noticing the child flinch but not pull away. It's okay, kid. Everything is fine. The boy refused to meet his eyes, staring steadfastly at the ground. I'm so sorry for cry, a hiccuping sob broke through. See, crying on why, Eraserhead-san, no need to apologize for that, okay? His hand moved from the boy's shoulder to the top of his head, ruffling the curls, and he wondered if this is what having a heart felt like as his chest grew almost painful at the sight of the boy leaning into his hand. He was like a cat. No, a kitten. A very nervous, touch-starved kitten that likely would bolt if he spoke wrong or moved too fast. Aizawa could handle a kitten. Let's take a seat, alright, he offered softly, gently nudging the boy back towards the couch while doing his best to keep a hand on his head. Once seated, he ruffled the curls once more, earning a weak giggle from the boy. He must be doing something right. Can you tell me what's wrong? Is there anything I can help you with? The boy's gaze dropped, fiddling with the edge of the obnoxiously colored All Might hoodie he wore. And nothing's wrong. I never thought I would meet you. He raised a brow at that. Not many people even know who I am. 'Cause you're an underground hero, the boy said with a serious look on his face that should not be as cute as it was. If lots of people knew you, then it would be harder for you to do your job. People would know your quirk and use it against you. It would make stealth near impossible. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧𝙮 could not help his blink of surprise as he processed the boy's words. Wow, kid. You're a smart one, aren't you? The boy seemed to process what he said, and his cheeks turned bright red, somehow making his freckles even more prominent. Grabbing his hood and yanking it firmly over his head, hiding his face, he mumbled, "It's just the obvious thing." "Not really," he replied with a shrug, keeping his tone neutral. The boy peeked back out at him as he continued to speak. "I know adults who still don't understand the purpose of underground heroics. They think that unless you are limelight with a flashy quirk, you aren't really a hero. What if you were quirkless?" Aizawa immediately replies, "You don't need a quirk to be a hero, kid." And then the boy promptly burst into tears. Again. Kid. Kid, what's wrong? The boy had launched himself into the hero's arms, sobbing heavily into his chest, while 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧 tried to process how he triggered another sobbing episode. Then he noticed the boy's shoes, and everything just clicked. Oh, kid, the child was wearing primordial shoes. Shoes designed for the quirkless. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧 was very familiar with how the quirkless were treated. They were probably the one class of people that were treated worse than those with villainous or mutation quirks. Quirkless children in general were rare, and most quirkless were in the older generations. The young ones were not treated kindly. So, yes, Aizawa was generally not good with kids. He usually wanted nothing to do with the Hellions. But right now, he could make an exception and pretend to be someone that was a decent member of society. Something that this boy likely rarely experienced. Anyone can be a hero if they set their mind to it. Even though the sobbing grew louder, the arms clutching his shirt growing tighter, Aizawa did not really mind. And if he was trying to plot the best way to track down everyone who had ever hurt this child and bring about their demise, well, Nezu did owe him a few favors. It took a solid 10 minutes and Hisashi bursting through the doors to check on 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧 before the boy finally calmed down enough to stop crying. Thankfully, the boy's hero worship in general seemed to snap him out of his hysterics enough to send him into a gleeful muttering rant about the voice hero's quirk, listing strengths and weaknesses that neither hero had even considered, and 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧 thought back to his earlier assessment of the boy being smart. He realized that the observation had been an extreme understatement. Whistling, he drawled, "Kid, you're even smarter than I originally thought." The boy, whose eyes were still slightly red-rimmed from crying earlier, looked caught between shock and awe at the comment. "What? It's a nothing, just the obvious." "We clearly have very different thoughts on what is obvious, little listener," Hisashi replied, talking in a much calmer voice than usual. "I've worked with professional quirk analysts, and none were on par with your skills." "Quirk analysts," the kid mumbled, brows pinched in a thoughtful way. "You mean that's a job?" Neither missed how when the conversation turned to things the boy was passionate about, his stutter dropped. "You bet it is. But it's also a very useful skill for heroics," Aizawa interjected firmly. "One that many heroes take for granted. You are already leaps and bounds ahead of most adults, so you will likely be overprepared for when you are finally old enough to join my class." That certainly got the boy's attention. "Wait, what class?" "My class, here at UA," Aizawa replied in a nonchalant way, though carefully watching the boy for more tears. "There is no way I am trusting anyone else as your heroics teacher." The boy became a mess of stuttering, arms flailing as he tried to form words. Hisashi gave him a pointed look. "The boy is like 6. I'm 7, came the indignant cry between stutters. You are so small. Puffing out his cheeks and crossing his arms with a huff, he muttered, you sound like Kaken. What the hell is a Kaken? 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧𝙮. Hisashi whined with his quirk leaking through, causing Aizawa to activate his quirk and send Izuku into another awe-filled muttering spree. You can't swear in front of the green bean. You're gonna corrupt him. Kaken swears more than him. Again, the hell is a Kaken, and do I need to fight it? What's this about fighting and corruption? A voice cooed from the doorway. The kid made a small gasp and whispered, Miss Midnight, then, he frowned. I'm not allowed to watch her fights on HeroTube. That's a good thing, kid. Turning his attention towards Nemurai, Aizawa calmly remarked, this is my new kid. I'm keeping him. Shouter Aizawa, Hisashi interjected in a stern tone. That is called kidnapping. I call it dibs. Shouter. The R-rated hero huffed before striding towards the group. So, is anyone going to introduce me to this little cutie? Oh yeah, Aizawa drawls, scratching the back of his head. What's your name, kid? You plan to kidnap a child, and you don't even know his name. Meh, details. Then, a quiet voice broke through it all. You really want to teach me? Letting his gaze soften as he looked down at the boy, he nodded. Yeah, kid. I don't waste time on anyone that I don't think has potential. The boy glanced between the two new adults, hunching in on himself in a way that broke his heart, and whispered, even though I'm quirkless. A quirk is a tool, kid. If anyone could be a hero without one, it would be you. He expected the tears, but this time, they were silently trailing down the kid's face as he spoke softly. I liked All Might 'cause he always saves people with a smile, even when it's bad. Then the doctor told me I was quirkless, and everyone said I couldn't be a hero. But I still wanted to be. I wanted to help people, even though I didn't have a quirk. And I kept looking for heroes like me. And I found you. You won the sports festival, even against all those strong quirks, even mutant quirks that yours wouldn't work on. You basically fought quirkless, and you won and became a hero, and the kid took a deep breath. I realized that I could still be a hero. The boy stood up in front of Aizawa, face scrunched in a determined expression. I will be a hero. I'll prove myself and be in your class, Eraserhead-san. I promise. If Aizawa had glanced at his two friends, he would have seen the looks of awe and tears on their faces as the boy spoke. He would have seen the look they both shared as he dropped a hand atop the boy's curls and ruffled them, or noticed Nemurai sneakily taking pictures, but all he could notice in that moment was the boy in front of him. Grinning broadly, the Erasure Pro asked, What's your name, kid? Izuku. Well, Izuku, call me Aizawa. Giving the boy's head one last pat, he rose to stand. Zeshi, keep an eye on the kid for a bit. I need to talk to Nedzu. Talk to him about what? About who I need to fight to adopt the kid. I'm sorry, what? Hellions chat Sonic, can someone please give me an update? It's been quiet and I am getting concerned. Night, Aizawa is trying to forcefully adopt the boy now. Sonic, haha, very funny. Screm, no. Screm, no, not funny. Screm, Tensai, he called dibs. Sonic. OSHT. Let me sleep dim in it. Prepare to be an uncle, beach. So let me get this straight, Aizawa drawled, slouching in the chair next to Nighteye. The kid's not only been treated like CRP for years because he's quirkless, but he also has a super villain for a father that wants to turn him into his successor. Sighing, Nighteye nodded. That's the brief summary, yes. Though, I can assure you that the father is dead. Did you find a body? It was quite the grudge match between him and All Might. I'll take that as a no, the Erasure hero states bluntly before turning his full attention to Nedzu. The kid can stay with me. My quirk and training is best suited to protect him from anyone sent to collect him. Mirai narrowed his eyes. You seem to be under the impression that the boy has already been placed under your care. Aizawa simply blinked. You seem to be under the impression that I would accept another option. All Might and I are perfectly capable of caring for 𝙎𝙬𝙧𝙮 workaholics who are the biggest limelight heroes in Japan, let alone the world. Yes, you are both perfect options for a child who needs to be hidden and protected around the clock. We can be cautious. All you need is a paparazzi shot at the wrong time, and the boy is on every news network in Japan in under an hour, the man deadpanned as both scowled at the other. Trust me when I say that while I would kill a man for Izuku, I would not make this offer if I thought for a second that taking him in would put him at risk. I'm not asking you to cut off contact, I'm asking you to be practical. Finally, Mirai deflated, slumping down into his chair with a tired sigh. My judgment may be a tad clouded with my fondness for the boy. Shouter let out a snort. This morning I hated children, and now I want to simultaneously adopt one and fight anyone who ever even looked at him wrong. Trust me, I understand. But we must be logical about this. The rat, who had been watching the two bicker like a tennis match, simply smiled, sipping on his tea with a small chuckle. I must say, Aizawa, I've never seen you warm up to a child, let alone so quickly. He's a good kid, the man muttered, burying his face in his capture weapon. It's a good thing we found him when we did, Nighteye interjected smoothly, trying to steer back on topic and not think about the fact that he would have to explain this turn of events to Yagi later. The child would have suffered greatly from the plans his father had for him. Who is the dad, anyway? Someone not known to the general public, Nedzu explains, his tone more serious than either pro was used to. I cannot go into detail as of now, Aizawa, but I can tell you that the man is dangerous. He is currently unofficially ranked as a SS+ rank supervillain. Dark eyes slowly widened in unrestrained horror. Rankings don't go above S rank - they do for him, Nighteye growled out. The man is a monster, and I will not allow him anywhere near Izuku. Neither will I. Straightening in his chair, Aizawa grew deathly serious. I don't mind protecting him, but it sounds like he will need more protection than I could provide due to my patrols and classes. I was thinking the same thing, Nedzu chirps, pulling up something on his laptop. I have plans in place due to another circumstance involving the hero commission - he pointedly ignored the concerned looks the two men shared over that tidbit of information. But now it seems we should be moving those plans up on the timeline. So, practically bouncing as he turned the laptop towards the two men, he asks, what are your opinions of on-campus dorms? All Might look like someone had just kicked his puppy. What do you mean we are signing over guardianship? Well, it might as well have been a puppy, thinking back to the pout Izuku gave him when he said that it was time to leave UA. Aizawa literally carried the boy to the door, several teachers trailing behind, and you could have sworn that they were marching to death, not to wave the boy goodbye for a few days. He almost felt bad for Cementos, who would have several people practically breathing down his neck to have the teacher dorms completed. Pinching the bridge of his nose, Mirai sighed. Technically, you never had custody to begin with. I did. And still do. The man in question let out a tired huff as he slumped down into his bed. He had finally been discharged from the hospital and placed on bed rest for the next few weeks while the doctors plotted out next steps on how to possibly reconstruct his stomach and lungs. So now here they sat in All Might's apartment, Izuku sound asleep in the next room, clutching an All Might plush that was almost as big as him. All Might made sure to take a plethora of pictures before he finally relented to Nighteye's demands that he rest. Still pouting, Yagi huffed, you know what I mean, we are not fully signing him over, Toshinori, Nighteye began gently, trying to explain his reasoning. You know as well as I that your position as the symbol of peace is both a blessing and a curse. Keeping the boy with us would keep him in the spotlight. The villains would know where to find him, and as strong as you are, you cannot possibly be able to protect him at all times. But we cannot just abandon him to someone else. And we are not doing that. In a hushed, whispered tone, he firmly rebuked, we are simply getting help. Nedzu is arguably the smartest being on the planet. If anyone could keep the boy safe, it would be him. And he will not be keeping the boy locked in a tower or something, we can see him as often as we longing. All Might went silent for a bit, seeming to mull over this information, which Nighteye took for a good thing. As much as the idea of not keeping the boy hurt him, he knew that this was the best option for Izuku. They could still be involved in his life, but the boy would receive more support and protection this way. And, thankfully, Toshinori seemed to be accepting this, albeit begrudgingly. Then, in a hesitant voice, Toshinori comments, "You know, my recovery might take me a while, and the school has recovery girl on site," and with a look, Mirai knew what his friend was thinking, and he found himself agreeing with the idea. "Let me give Nedzu a call first thing in the morning." Nedzu agreed. From the sound of it, the principal almost seemed to be expecting this, and Nighteye tried not to dwell too much on that thought. From the floor plans that Nedzu sent, it appeared as if he, All Might, and Aizawa would each have an apartment on the same floor. All the apartments would have a spare room for Izuku to live in, so the boy could stay over with any of them at any time. They were still in shock, however, over how all the other UA teachers were on board with the dorm system as well. Within the building, Midnight, Cementos, Power Loader, and Vlad would live on the second on the first floor, whereas present MIC, 13, Snipe, and Hound Dog would be on the fourth. All of it was strategic. Midnight and Vlad were well suited for close-quarter combat and quickly subduing combatants with their quirks, whereas Cementos and Power Loader were suited for building up solid defenses. 3 on the top floor were better for long-range combat, giving them an advantage being at a higher vantage point, whereas Hound Dog provided a spare close-range fighter should the need arise. And Nedzu lived who knows where, though Aizawa had muttered something back at UA about the rat living in the vents. Explaining this all to Izuku had been a lot easier than expected. The boy lit up when told he would get to not only live at UA, but that he also would be able to stay with his 3 favorite heroes. Toshinori sobbed at the genuine joy in Izuku's voice as the boy devolved into a happy muttering rant, completely oblivious to the man's breakdown. The next item on their list to do in the meantime was to order furniture for the new apartments. While yes, they technically already had 2, both their normal apartments and the ones at the agency, Yagi insisted that he would just buy new furniture for them. As ridiculous as it was to have 3 apartments, if the pair planned to continue this back-and-forth living arrangement with Izuku for the next few years, it was necessary. However, Nighteye quickly became aware of one glaring issue. All Might often forgot how rich he was. His accounts were rarely touched, and most of his income went to charity, though he still possessed a sizable nest egg. And now he was in possession of both a credit card and a small child. "Yagi, why is your accountant calling me about excessive charges to your cards? Izuku has 3 rooms he needs to decorate. And he needs clothes as well besides my merch. Toshinori, there is a charge for nearly 1 million yen from just one hero merch website. I regret nothing. Toshinori." All purchasing afterwards was closely monitored by Mirai. The next week went by in a blur, and Mirai found himself slowly coming to the realization of just how tightly this boy had them wrapped around his finger. Not that Izuku did that on purpose. The child just was so innocent and kind, wrapped in an almost illegally adorable exterior, that they should have seen this coming. With Nighteye crashing in one of Yagi's spare guest rooms, the trio quickly fell into a routine. Mornings consisted of sleepy mumbles and mutters as the boy flitted aimlessly around the apartment with owlish, confused eyes blinking slowly whenever one spoke to him. Breakfast in hand, either Mirai or Toshinori would gently guide Izuku to the couch, letting him zombie munch his way through his food while the boy unknowingly curled into their side. The child was terribly starved for affection and was still working up the nerve to seek it out, so when he leaned into it in his sleep-hazed state, they never turned him away. It would be like removing a sleeping cat from your lap, you just don't do that. Mirai would have to leave soon after that, having to keep the agency running while Yagi was recovering, leaving said pro and the child to their own devices for the day. Usually, this was fine, with the boy either chattering to the pro, occasionally playing board games that had been ordered during the shopping spree that shall not be mentioned, or when Yagi was napping, Izuku would delve onto the laptop Nighteye lent him, studying new hero fights and rapidly filling up his hero analysis books at a monumental pace. If Aizawa's insistence that he could be a hero without a quirk had lit a blaze in Izuku, the young boy certainly was not against it. He had always been the type to go all or nothing, and now he had a sensei to impress. But yes, the past week had been rather domestic for the trio, not that any of them would complain about it. Izuku still suffered from moments where he felt himself to be a burden, however, and the two gently coaxed him to come to them with his concerns, insisting that he could never be a burden and that they cared for his well-being. They wanted him safe and happy and loved. By the end of the week, they had admitted it to themselves. The kid was family. And they would do anything in their power to keep him safe. Bouncing in excitement, Izuku spoke a mile a minute, barely pausing in breath as he happily rambled about the move today. Besides a small duffel that they each carried with things they might need along with Izuku's enormous, bright yellow backpack stuffed full of hero journals, everything else they needed should have already been brought up and unloaded for the most part by the moving company Yagi hired. While the smaller items and personal effects would likely still need to be unpacked, Yagi was not in the condition to assemble furniture, and Nighteye would be tied up with paperwork for the day. And they certainly could not expect Izuku to do it. Stepping out of the cab, Yagi kept the cap pulled low on his face, hiding as best he could. Even with the bit of bulk he lost post-fight, he seriously felt like he was inches away from deflating. As weird as that sounds, he was still certainly recognizable for anyone who looked at his face. Still, it amazed him how easily he could hide in plain sight from the public, just foregoing his hairstyle, throwing on a cap and casual clothes, and no one was the wiser so long as they did not stare for too long. Izuku even wore a shirt with his face plastered on the front, and no one so far had batted an eye. Standing at the gates to greet them, Aizawa seemed dead tired as usual, though a spark of life seemed to flash as he laid eyes on Izuku. Izuku, for his part, let out a happy gasp before darting off towards the man, shouting out excited cries of Aizawa-sensei before devolving into a rapid-fire muttering about various hero fights he had seen in the week since he met the hero. Aizawa, for his part, nearly choked on air over the small child calling him sensei and struggled to school his face as he patted the boy's unruly curls. By the time Mirai and Yagi reached the gate, Izuku had two of his analysis books dragged out, one shoved into Aizawa's hands and another he was flipping through with a determined look, wanting to compare two heroes' fighting styles. Look at this. She may be more mainstream, but her fighting style is so similar to several underground pros. A lot of people say mean things about it and say she fights dirty, but it's so effective. Her capture rates are 27% higher than other pros her age and Izuku. Yagi gently interjected, causing the boy to blink up at him owlishly. Perhaps we can finish this after we see our new apartments. The boy softly replied with an before practically vibrating in place with excitement. I get to see my new rooms. Smirking, Aizawa ruffled the boy's hair again, seeming unable to leave the wild curls be. Yeah, kid. We can even help you set them up. Since, you know, UA was somehow mailed crates full of hero merch over the past few days. Wincing under the look that the underground pro sent him, Yagi looked thoroughly chastised but did not cave under the stare. Izuku deserves the best. Yes, he does. Steering the boy off with the hand on his head and waving over his shoulder at the two other adults, Aizawa drawled, Come on, let's get moving before the vultures begin to descend. Mirai frowned. We were careful to avoid the media, I meant the other teachers. You aren't the only ones who enjoy Izuku's company. The kid certainly has some lungs on him. Mirai nods, a tired smile on his face as he watched Izuku practically shriek with joy over every piece of hero merch that was pulled from the shipping boxes. Yagi had been delegated to helping the boy sort through the monstrous pile, Mirai saying that it could be his physical therapy for the day when they all knew that this was his punishment for abusing his poor credit card. The man might possibly be deaf by the end of this, but he still seemed determined to help Izuku with the very difficult decision of what merch goes in what room. Shaking his head as Izuku clutched tightly to a plush of the up-and-coming new hero Mako, rattling off her stats and delving into her strengths and weaknesses with ease, Aizawa quietly commented, We are very lucky. Mirai's smile softened as he watched the boy. Yes, we are. I never imagined growing attached to a child before, but I am honored to have met Izuku. The Erasure hero was quiet for a moment, watching the boy with a distant gaze as the boy slowly began to delve into other heroes to talk about, but then he spoke with a careful tone. I agree. But we are also very lucky that the kid is in our care and not his. His eyes slid towards Nighteye, who had in turn grown tense. A mind like that is a dangerous thing. And I dread thinking about what would happen if he ever wanted to bring hero society to its knees. Nighteye tightened his grip on his cane. That won't happen. Izuku is our child, not his. Aizawa smirked. Yes, he is. Then, watching Izuku drag out his hero notebooks again, literally spouting what sounds like advanced physics at a clearly out of his depth Yagi while trying to explain the trajectory and power potential behind Mako's various kicks, he adds, "You do realize that Nedzu intends to make the kid his personal student, right? Good gods, don't give me any more nightmare fuel." After the harrowing adventure that was Izuku trying to determine which merch goes in which room, Izuku found himself nervously shifting in a chair across from Nedzu. Not that he found the principal intimidating. Okay, he was definitely a bit intimidating, but Izuku just had so many questions. But he was worried about offending the being, and he really did not want to do that because he was possibly the smartest creature ever and was so cool. And I do not mind questions, the principal chirped with a cheery smile, causing Izuku to let out a squeak of surprise as he realized he was mumbling out loud. Being curious is a wonderful thing, something that many take for granted. It's how we learn and expand our mind beyond just senselessly cramming in random facts. Are you sure? The cheery smile grew more gentle. I do not mind, Midoriya. I am actually personally curious to hear what you have to say. Izuku stared in awe at the mammal before him. Sure, Nighteye and All Might had been telling him all week that he did not mind his muttering rants and such, but it still caught him off guard. Most people found him annoying, though all the heroes he had met so far seemed to not mind. Hesitantly, glancing towards Nighteye and Eraserhead who had joined him in this meeting for support, to which both men gave small, encouraging smiles, he turned back to Nedzu and blurted out, "Is your base animal a stoat or a sun bear?" Silence. The principal blinked, a look of surprise on his face. My base animal. Everything I've read about you, the very little information I've found, says or leads me to believe that you are a chimera, Izuku slowly replies, tactfully dodging around the not-so-nice bits he had read about what mean people did to the hero principal. And while a lot of people say you're a rat, you clearly aren't, the boy declared in a huff, growing more confident as he spoke, his tiny arms waving in the air and seeming almost offended over the accusation. You clearly have the coloring and snout shape of a stoat, but you also exhibit bear-like characteristics, and based on your size and ear shape, as well as teeth on the few instances you show them off, which you rarely do because people seem nervous about, which is stupid and rude of them. But yes, a sun bear seems to be a good option, I think. But still, you were originally a non-chimeric animal with a quirk, high specs, and I was wondering which animal. My bets are on a stoat. More silence. The two pros in the room stared in utter shock and confusion at the tiny child before them. Izuku was only a little taller than the principal, still very small for his age, but after listening to the mini-speech, he suddenly seemed so much bigger. His eyes practically glowed, an excited energy buzzing beneath his skin as he patiently waited for the answer to his question. Nedzu outwardly betrayed nothing, still calmly smiling at the boy. Then, slowly, he replied, my base animal is a stoat. Then, with a slowly widening smile, he asked, have you ever played chess before? No, sir. Then would you allow me the honor of teaching you how to play? And as the boy excitedly agreed, the two pros silently resigned themselves to the fate of their sunshine child becoming Nedzu's newest personal student. All things considered, everything was going quite well in regards to their problem child. Several months had passed and Izuku was settled in nicely into the new teacher's dorm, alternating between the three pros. Most nights were spent at All Might's apartment due to Aizawa having night patrols and Mirai often having to stay at Might Tower due to paperwork, but the boy was very adamant about rotating between the three as much as possible. There was only one incident where Yagi and Aizawa argued over who Izuku should stay with. There were a lot of tears. Way too many tears. Basically, a rule had to be made that no one could argue about who Izuku stayed with. The boy felt so guilty over having to choose that the next few days were spent with all three men crammed into Mirai's apartment so that Izuku would not have to choose one over the other. Needless to say, they learned their lesson. All Might also may have bought more merch for the boy using his emergency credit card that he had hidden from Nighteye, which was false. Mirai was very well aware of the credit card's existence. He had coffee with All Might's accountant once a week. He just let the man believe he was being sneaky. So long as the purchases are reasonable. But yes. Beyond that little hiccup, everything had been going very well. Even Izuku's lessons with Nezu seemed rather tame. Of course, the principal could be lulling them into a false sense of security. Which honestly was likely the situation. But at least the two have not caused any chaos yet. Sasaki-san. Can you help me with something? Nighteye glanced up from his book, brow arched in question. Oh. What would that be? The boy dragged out a binder from his backpack and slapped it down on the table. I need to know how legal this plan I made with Nezu-sensei is. Of course this happened on another DMN Tuesday. Green Bean Protection Squad, Uncle Fortune Cookie. I keep forgetting how absolutely terrifying this child is. Dadzawa, sounds like a you problem. Why not? How can you be terrified of the bean? He's so precious. Uncle Fortune Cookie, because the boy just devised a fully thought-out and thoroughly detailed plan on how to heal All Might. Uncle Screm, he what? Spacent, oh my granny, is this why he has been asking me so many questions the past few weeks? Dadzawa, how detailed are we talking? Uncle Fortune Cookie, he has a list of medical quirk specialists that, when working together, could easily rebuild his lung and stomach. Someone that can regrow tissue, another that can manipulate tissue into various organs, a set of twins that can replenish red BLD cells and plasma respectively, and for good measure, someone that can reduce the likelihood of the body rejecting new organs. He even took into account stamina issues and found a doctor that can transfer stamina from a donor to the patient when healing. Uncle Fortune Cookie, there is much more, but that's the gist of it. Uncle Beelzebub, holy SHC Uncle Fortune Cookie, he lent me the binder full of his notes which I am currently bringing to Recovery Girl to review, but this might actually work. Granny, coordinating that many doctors who likely have waiting lists will be a nightmare. Dadzawa, I hate to say it, but All Might's position and influence might make that a bit easier. Uncle Fortune Cookie, I would say the hardest part is that the twins are in Europe and another is in the US, but yes, I believe we can certainly work out a time for them all to come after some consultation calls. Grandfather Satan, not before we draft up several NDAs for them. Uncle Diglett, if the kid decides he doesn't want to go the hero route, can I steal him for the support course? Dadzawa, over your dead body. Uncle Detective, aren't you supposed to say over my dead body Zawa? No, because I'm not the one that's going to die. Uncle Diglett, I have made a mistake Dad might, why does my phone keep going off? Why not, scroll up. Dad might. He did that for me. Dadzawa, I feel the need to let you all know that Yagi is sobbing. Uncle Screm, AWWWW. Dadzawa, like a beach. Grandfather Satan, need I remind you how you reacted when you walked in on Izuku playing hero in the teacher's lounge with your capture weapon last week? Dadzawa, fight. Me. While Nighteye and Nezu were busy coordinating the clusterfuck that is doctors' schedules and NDAs with Yagi being fired from appointment to appointment, Izuku found himself primarily in Aizawa's care for the next few weeks. Neither really minded, sans the fact that Aizawa slowly came to realize that Izuku had far more energy than he did. While he could usually let the boy burn this off by researching quirks or playing on some of UA's obstacle courses on the lowest setting of course, he knew how to handle a child. Mostly, he found the boy often begging him to play games with him. Things like hide and seek, heroes and villains, etc., normal child games. And that's when Aizawa realized something. Slamming open the meeting room door, Aizawa loudly declared, Izuku is a child. Everyone stared. Slowly, MIC cautiously asked, yes, show. I assumed you were aware of this. Rolling his eyes, he strolled into the room and dropped down into the nearest available seat, ignoring the concerned looks of the other teachers. Yes, I know this, Zeshi. What I meant is that Izuku is a child, yet the only ones he is exposed to are other adults. That can't be healthy. Nemirai looked concerned. Has the bean been lonely? No, but you all break into my apartment on a regular basis and insist that not socializing with people my age is, quote, bad for my mental health, he said that part with physical air quotes and an exasperated tone and a scoff, so I would assume it's bad for him as well. Hound Dog let out a heavy sigh from his seat on the far side of the room. I am inclined to agree. From the few sessions I have had with Izuku, I fear that he was suffering from isolation long before he came into our care. Shaking his head, he added, while he is doing far better with the support we have been providing him, children can be quite cruel towards anyone perceived as different, especially with adult influences. Unfortunately, Vlad broached cautiously, side-eyeing the Erasure Pro who was known for going feral over his kid. Izuku's quirklessness makes it difficult to introduce him to children. Not to mention the fact that we are trying to keep his public presence down. We are literally schooling and housing him on campus for this very reason. 13 spoke up. We could get him a friend. Aizawa slumped in his chair. I guess I could put up with us getting another kid for Izuku. 13 blinked. I meant a pet. Ectoplasm had just floated into the room as MIC slammed his head on the table, half shouting, "Show, we are not kidnapping a child to be a friend for the bean." With that, Ectoplasm turned around without a word and floated out. If I find them unattended, is it really kidnapping? Yes. How the F do you have a job with children? Vlad asked in quiet confusion. Majima chugged his coffee. Nedzu likes him. He is certainly entertaining. Everyone, sans Aizawa, shrieked in surprise when they finally noticed the principal whose head was poking out of the vent above them. Ignoring the startled screams, Nedzu turned towards Aizawa. I do not see the harm in introducing Izuku to other children in a controlled environment off campus while under supervision. Perhaps visiting a children's play park. Aizawa seemed to think for a second, then shrugged. It saves us having to take care of another kid. For the love of God, Aizawa. Nedzu quickly cuts Vlad off. Perfect. You can take Izuku to the park tomorrow. That sent Aizawa's brain screeching to a halt. Wait, me? Why yes of course. Would you trust someone else with Izuku's safety? Hell no. Then, processing this, Aizawa groaned as if in pain. God damn it. Excellent. Nedzu chirped brightly. I will prepare any necessary safety measures for tomorrow, and you simply have to take Izuku and ensure his safety. Interacting with the public can be kept to a minimum. Fine. 13 interjects cautiously. What do you mean by safety measures? The principal is already pulling himself back into the vent while he responds. As if I would let my student off grounds without a tracking device. And I need to infiltrate the cameras on the route to the park. Oh, so much to do. With that, the rat disappeared, leaving his teachers to try and process everything. Aizawa just slumped even further in his chair. The things I put up with for the problem child. Looking confused, Vlad just says, all you're doing is taking him to the park. Exactly. I'm going into public. That's where people are. You concern me sometimes. So far, everything was going well. Leaning against a tree nearby, Aizawa watched his charge closely while still keeping an eye on his surroundings. Izuku hung to the edges of the park, playing on the swing set by himself. Aizawa knew the goal of this trip was to socialize the boy more, but he also acknowledged that the boy had been through a lot at a young age and interacting with other children would be very difficult for the boy. So, the Erasure hero was in no rush to push the boy into talking with other children. Izuku will do so at his own pace, and he seemed content for now, swinging as high as his tiny legs could take him. Everything was calm, ignoring the occasional distant shriek of a child, but Aizawa strangely enough found himself not caring. All he cared about was the fact that his charge seemed happy. Happy and safe and well cared for. That was enough for him. He should have known that things were a little too calm. Distracted by his thoughts, he did not notice the attacker until Izuku was being full-body tackled off the swing set, causing his charge to cry out in distress. Aizawa immediately leapt into action, his capture weapon whipping out to yank the assailant off his kid and restrain them before dashing forward. Izuku! He had to keep a tight grip on the scarf, so he couldn't properly pick up the boy who sat up in a stunned daze as he knelt beside him. Are you alright? Blinking owlishly, Izuku began to reply, but the restrained assailant cut him off. Get the F away from Deku, you dearmen hobo. Aizawa blinked. Deku. He finally realized that the assailant in question was none other than a child, one possibly around Izuku's age. Spiky blonde hair and bright red eyes, sparks flashed from the boy's hands as he tried to free himself. Aizawa instinctively flared his own quirk, cutting off the sparks and causing the boy to start practically growling as he threw even more swear words towards the pro. Then, in a very small voice, Izuku whispered, "Kaken." And it clicked. Watching as Izuku burst into tears and dashed towards the angry child, wrapping him tightly in a hug as he babbled on about how much he missed the boy, Shouter released the restraints of his capture weapon slowly, watching as the angry boy hugged Izuku back even more fiercely, yelling about how dare Izuku disappear on him like that. He might have been imagining it, but the angry boy might even have been crying too. Sighing heavily, Aizawa muttered, "At least I know what in the hell a Kaken is now." Bakugo Katsuki was not known for being a kind child. He was loud and brash and rough, everyone knew this, but he had an amazing quirk. Everyone told him what a strong hero he would be, maybe even stronger than All Might. He would be strong and unbeatable without anyone's help. He didn't need anyone else, everyone else was just extras in his story. He was fine being alone. But why did it bother him so much when Deku didn't show up for school one day? He brushed it off. Deku had been sick before. He was weak, Hanaka-sensei said so. And so do all the other teachers. They told him that quirkless people just can't handle the same things as quirked people. That's why Deku cries so much. He wasn't as strong as Katsuki. Let's be heroes together, Kaken. Sparks crackled from his palm as he thought about how much weaker Deku was. Stupid Deku still wanted to be a hero too. He had that stupid notebook yesterday, writing about hero fights, calling it hero analysis for the future. It just made him so angry. Why can't Deku understand? He's weak. He would just get himself killed as a hero. The teachers told him this. He heard them talking about how the boy was quirkless, how a quirkless person can't be a hero, how the boy would end up dead. Heroes are supposed to be strong and protect people weaker than them. That's why Katsuki continued to let Deku follow him around. He's strong. He can protect Deku. He can keep his friend the nerd safe. Sure, they used to talk all the time about how they were going to be heroes together, but they can't. Deku can't be a hero without a quirk. But he just won't listen. So Katsuki tried to show him. It started with Katsuki challenging him. To races, to ball throws, to other challenges to show Deku that he was weaker. And the nerd lost every time. But he would not stop. He still went on and on about how he just needed to practice, to get stronger. He said that he would prove that he could be a hero. 2. That he could stop villains without a quirk. And that's when Katsuki decided to prove that he can't. The first time was an accident. He was just so angry. Deku wouldn't listen. Katsuki had it, and with a growl, he shoved Deku to the ground. Both froze in shock, neither really saying much, and as the tears formed in the smaller boy's eyes, Katsuki stormed off. Not because he didn't want to see the boy cry. No, he just didn't want to be there. That was it. The tears didn't bother him. The tears made him feel like something in his chest cracked. Deku kept it up though, kept trying to prove himself. So Katsuki began shoving him more. Sometimes, other kids joined in, telling him how he needed to teach Deku his place. Deku got better at not falling over all the time, and once when Deku got the nerve to yell at Katsuki to stop being mean, all while shaking and crying where he stood. Katsuki swung. Deku was quiet for a few days after that. But he just didn't stop. No matter how often he shoved, no matter how often he swung, Deku just got back up. And Katsuki just got angrier. And the angrier he got, the harder it was to control his quirk. So, it was no surprise when it finally happened. When he grabbed the boy's arm and the crackling filled the air. He could still smell the burned skin. Deku had cried out in pain, darting away from the boy and clutching his arm tightly to his chest as he sobbed loudly. Teachers got involved. Katsuki was told that it was an accident, that it was fine. Deku was scolded to not agitate other kids before being sent to the principal. Did he even get to see the nurse? He was out for 2 whole days after that. And when he came back, he didn't follow Katsuki around anymore. So Katsuki began to seek him out. He doesn't know why he did it. Deku had gotten quieter about his dream to be a hero. He no longer declared it to the world like he used to do. But the fact that Deku was now avoiding him made him mad. Deku had been following him their entire lives. Sure, the teachers and other students said he was useless, but even if Deku couldn't be a hero, he was still Katsuki's friend responsibility. How can he protect him if he went off on his own? And the fact that Deku still tried to stand up for other kids to stop bullies made him even angrier. He may not shout it to the world anymore, but Katsuki knew that Deku still thought he could be a hero. Deku was still going to try. And Katsuki grew more desperate to teach the boy that he can't die, he doesn't want him to die. So he continued to teach him. Deku cries more than he smiles now. Deku can't be a hero, but Katsuki would be his hero. He saw Hanako-sensei smirk last week after finding out Katsuki burnt Deku's arm again. Katsuki would save Deku from himself. But then Deku didn't come back. A week went by with no Deku, and Bakugo grew more and more agitated. And he sat back and watched how no one seemed to care. If they did, it was only to comment about how the waste of space was finally gone. Hanako-sensei was happy to have one less student. Other kids tried to take Deku's stuff that got left behind when he was taken out of school early that one day. Katsuki wouldn't let them. Finally, he snapped. "Sensei!" He shouted in the middle of class, quirk crackling along his palms. "When the F is that useless Deku coming back?" Hanako-sensei sighed, used to the outbursts Katsuki was prone to. The teachers said it was okay for him to be bold, that it was a hero trait to speak his mind. But as Hanako-sensei spoke, all the boldness left him. That kid. Oh, he isn't coming back. Katsuki's body felt cold. What? The brat's mom died, the teacher commented with a shrug, the rest of the class snickering when he called Deku a brat. Katsuki just felt like he couldn't breathe. Auntie was dead, she was gone, he can't. Not sure what they did with him, but he isn't our problem anymore. Isn't that great, Baku? One of the extras replied with a smirk. No more of that useless freak following you around. Let's be heroes together, Kakin. The room began to spin. Let's be heroes together, Kakin. Deku wouldn't be following Katsuki anymore. Let's be heroes together, Kakin. Katsuki swore he was going to save him. Kakin his hand sparked, and everything went white. He would take it all back just to have Izuku call him Kakin again. Mitsuki was having a bad day. Well, it was more like a bad few months, but today in particular was not going well. Her head hurt from the stress of everything as of late, her heart clenching painfully in her chest, and overall she just was not okay. But she was doing her best to SCK it up and cope. Because as bad as she was feeling, Katsuki was undoubtedly feeling worse. Therapy this morning had not gone well at all. Despite Katsuki understanding that the therapy was supposed to help him cope with what has happened, despite showing some interest in participating, he still had days where he withdrew. And by withdrew, she meant become a surly and testy ticking time bomb. The extra sessions with quirk counselors could only do so much, and they had burned through 3 therapists already. 2 just couldn't connect with the angry child, and the last one made some rather poor comments about the Quirkless. Considering one of the biggest points of the sessions was to help cut out all the toxic CRP that Aldera had shoved into her kid's head, the therapist did not last even half of a session. The newest one wasn't looking much better. Katsuki came out defensive and closed off, and the therapist had the fakest smile Mitsuki had ever seen plastered on her face when discussing exercises to practice for the next session. A session that Mitsuki did not think she would be booking. Trying to help her kid relax, she found herself dragging him to the park. He protested, not wanting to be around other kids. Not that she could blame him. But she insisted, telling him that the fresh air would do him good. He quickly took off, but she knew he was probably sulking in a bush somewhere. Settling on a bench, she prepared herself to be stuck waiting for her kid for an hour. Only to be interrupted by a phone call from an unknown number 5 minutes later. Scowling, she answered the phone. Who the F is this? At least I know this is your kid, came the muttered reply. Bristling, she snapped, what the F is that supposed to mean? And what's this have to do with Katsuki? A groan came in reply, and vaguely, she could hear a child crying. She cursed inwards, preparing herself to have to deal with an angry parent whose kid Katsuki made cry. Can you please come pry your angry and sobbing child off of mine? Her brain skidded to a halt. Sobbing. What do you mean my kid is crying? Katsuki never cries. Look, I'm just calling the number that the kid gave me. He ran up and tackled my kid, and he won't let go of my problem child. I really don't like dealing with tears, and both of them are crying now. What? Suddenly, a loud and familiar voice broke through on the other end of the line. I'm not sob crying, you sob hobo. Oh my god, that's Katsuki. So his name isn't actually Kaken. Mitsuki practically leapt to her feet as she heard the familiar nickname. What did you say? Mom. Katsuki called out, seeming to push his crying away to get her attention from the other end of the line. Her heart stutters hearing the kid call her something other than a hag, knowing that this was serious. Mom, we're by the swings. He has Deku. She took off without another word. He knew interacting with people was a mistake. Staring blankly at his phone, Aizawa was slightly miffed over the fact that the woman hung up on him. He could only assume it meant that she was heading over to intervene and pry her spawn off of Aizawa's kid, but that still meant that he had to deal with the two crying children alone in the meantime, unfortunately. Said crying children seemed to be getting a little less distressed, so Aizawa hesitantly edged his way towards them before carefully kneeling down. The blonde brat instantly had his hackles up, tightening his hold on the still sniffling Izuku and glaring at the older man warily. I'm not going to hurt you, kid. I'm not letting you take Deku away, the angry child snapped, tears still glistening in his eyes. Not again. With a small sob, Izuku cut in. Kaken. Aizawa-sensei is nice. He sob he's a P-pro hero. Katsuki's eyes narrowed at the man, and some might have found it intimidating. Aizawa, who has had to deal with MIC's goth phase back in high school and listened to Kiyoma gush about things he would rather have bleached from his memory, had no soul left except for the tiny little soft spot that Izuku had carved into his cold dead heart. So, he did not even flinch when the blonde practically growled while snapping, "Prove it." Carefully, so as not to startle the boy. Think about kittens, they are like kittens, this one is just feral. But hopefully up to date on shots. Does Izuku need shots? Possibly a rabies shot. After dealing with the feral brat, Aizawa reached into his pocket and pulled out a familiar card, his hero license, to be exact. Holding it out so that the boy could see, he calmly said, "My name is Aizawa Shouter, codename Eraserhead." The boy seemed doubtful. Which, yes, that's good that he didn't just believe the word of a random stranger and his piece of possibly fake plastic. Smart, but not helpful for Aizawa and his hopes to take his charge home in one piece and take a nap. Sneering, Kaken snapped, "Never heard of you." That's the point, Kaken. Deku whispered fiercely, tears lessening as he clung to the boy that had him in some version of a hug headlock. He's an underground pro hero. And then, in an even more hushed voice, he added, "And he works at UA, too." Now that made the boy's eyes go wide. Really? Ham. He teaches heroics. I've seen him teach. No fing way. Aizawa internally groaned. If his kid learned any swear words, he will never hear the end of it from the others. His amazing, Kaken, the greenette chirped, practically bouncing in place, or as well as he could. The blonde had loosened his grasp, but seemed as if he had no plans on letting go anytime soon. He's super talented and skilled at takedowns, and his quirk is awesome. And he takes good care of me and helps with my analysis and lets me help with his lesson plans. Also, Sensei said he would teach me how to be a hero. Izuku immediately clammed up, jaw clicking shut as he stared at Katsuki with wide eyes, a hint of worry in them, as if he were concerned about how the blonde would react. And for a moment, Aizawa worried as well, seeing how the boy in question tensed, grip slackening. Only to seemingly force himself to take a breath and think before saying, "Well, good. You need to train a lot if you're going to be my hero partner." Oh, and the tears were back. Katsuki huffed, but gruffly pulled the crying boy closer. "I'm not letting you out of my sight again." And oh, while he didn't like the sight of his charge crying, he could not help but feel grudging approval for the angry feral child. But still, emotions were not his forte. So, demon, this is intense for toddlers. Both boys stiffened before they were indignantly crying out at him that they were not, in fact, toddlers. Aizawa was aware of this, but he could only handle so many emotions in a day, and the tears were really starting to freak him out. "Oi! Who the F are you, and what are you doing with my kids?" And now he had to deal with what looked like an adult, female version of the tiny angry boy. Fun. His father is a what? A villain. Nezu chirped in a tone that was way too chipper for the current conversation. A very powerful one at that. Mitsuki had been rather hesitant about all of this. All she wanted to do was grab the boy she thought of as a nephew and run, maybe even deck the weird-ass hobo talking to the boy and her kid, but she let the man talk and explain himself first. Her irritation only grew learning that this man had legal guardianship over her kid, and it took all her willpower to not start shouting and cussing him out right then and there. She wanted answers. But he refused to give any, saying that the park was too open and that he could not risk them being overheard. And while she was wary of him wanting her to follow him to UA, after calling the school and confirming that yes, the scraggly homeless-looking man was a teacher there, she reluctantly agreed, so long as Katsuki was allowed to keep his hold on the green-haired boy. Her kid looked 2 seconds away from a breakdown, and separating him from Izuku would likely cause him to tip over the edge. So that's what led her to where she was currently, sitting across the weird rat that spoke and was apparently a principal of a hero school, telling her about how her nephew was currently at risk of being kidnapped and groomed into becoming a supervillain like his father. Frowning, she muttered, "I'm assuming this is going to make it more difficult to get custody of Izuku." "I'm afraid it means that you are not going to be able to take custody at all, Bakugo-san," Detective Tsukochi cautiously explained. Seeing the rage growing on the woman's face, he quickly continued explaining. "I'm sorry, but with all due respect, you cannot protect him the way he needs to be protected. Izuku's father was dangerous, and despite being deceased, he had ties to people that would use Izuku with no hesitation to continue his legacy. He needs to be in protective custody, and UA is the safest location for him as of now. I'm his godmother for FS sake." Mitsuki snapped harshly. "Shouldn't someone have asked me first?" According to his file, Sir Nighteye interjected. "You declined taking him in." "I would never." Then this is yet another thing falsified in the boy's file, the detective replied with a groan, pinching the bridge of his nose. Someone tried really hard to ensure that Izuku did not end up in a stable home environment. Nighteye sighed. "Another thing to investigate, though if his father had a hand in it, we will likely find another dead end." Slumping down, Mitsuki let out a heavy sigh as she processed everything that she had been told. "I knew the man was sketchy and SHT, but I just thought it was maybe mafia ties or some SHT, you know. Never had any concrete proof, but you've met him." Nighteye interjected, slight worry tinged on his tone. When Aizawa had called to let them know that he was bringing back 2 civilians who were close to young Izuku, Nighteye had all but sprinted back to UA while calling Detective Tsukochi to meet them. The concern was that they possibly have ties to All for One, but it did not take them long to put 2 and 2 together to see that her ties and loyalty were to Inko and the boy. Nodding, the woman snapped, "Unfortunately. The man is a pretentious PP, but he doted on Inko and little Aizu, so I tolerated him. Though he went on too many business trips in my opinion, however, but I guess that tracks with his real thing career." "He doted on the boy," the detective broached cautiously. The woman went quiet before asking, "Does Aizu know about who his father was?" "No, we have not told him who his father was, only that he passed away," Nighteye replied, grip tightening on his cane. "He was very subdued about it." Hesitating, Mitsuki quietly began, "Izuku is the kindest, most pure-hearted boy I've ever had the pleasure to meet. He would never be a villain willingly. But I will admit that he adored his dad. According to Inko, they would sit for hours talking about quirks, him teaching Izuku the basics of advanced sciences so that he could understand how they worked. Hell, the kid was way above his grade level, but the man insisted that Izuku go through school at the normal level, something about letting him experience the real world or some CRP. Grimacing, Nighteye tersely replied, "Yes, he would think that. I feel like I'm missing something." "We have come to the conclusion," Nezu explained softly, "that Izuku's father was allowing and building up Izuku's hero dreams in order to eventually turn him against heroes after facing discrimination for being quirkless." Mitsuki froze, but then a weary acceptance settled onto her face. Goddamn, that makes sense, considering how fed up Aldera was. Crossing her arms, she lets out a huff. I pulled Katsuki out of there about a week after Izuku went missing. He had a breakdown during class, and his quirk, he lost control and destroyed a lot of school property. I was cessed until he told me what they said about Izuku. About what the teachers let him do to poor little Izuku. Nighteye shifted forward. They let him do what? They let him treat the poor kid like a punching bag. Her voice broke at that, and she had unshed tears in her eyes. I knew that they weren't as close as when they were little, but I never saw this. They told him that hurting Izuku was helping the boy, that Izuku was too reckless, wanting to be a hero, that he would get himself killed if Katsuki did not do his job. She that word out with such bitterness, as a future hero, and put him in his place. Nighteye felt like he was going to throw up, gritting his teeth and shaking in his chair as he imagined what the poor boy went through. The fact that his own teachers, the people supposed to protect and care for him, to nurture his growth, would not only allow but encourage that sort of treatment. How is the case against Aldera going? Scrubbing at her eyes, Mitsuki perked up at that. Case? What case? We've been investigating the district as a whole, the detective explained. We have a good amount of evidence built up against them that the case should be open and shut. Would mine and Katsuki's testimonies help? It certainly would not hurt, Nedzu happily replied. Though, we do not want to press young Bakugo about sensitive matters. It would honestly probably help, at this point, Mitsuki interjected. He has a lot of guilt right now over everything, and we've been struggling to get him help with a good therapist who isn't wary of his unique personality or a quirkist 𝙎𝙮𝙮. Well, we have a therapist on site who would be more than happy to assist. I don't want to be any trouble. Heavens no, Hound Dog would be more than happy to help. He has plenty of experience with children, and I can assure you, he is not, quote, a quirkist 𝙎𝙮𝙮. The mother looked relieved. I would appreciate it, thank you. Tail swishing lightly, the principal tilted his head, and Nighteye instantly knew the rat was plotting. Also, back onto you mentioning UN enrolling your child from Aldera, how has finding new schooling accommodations been going? Aizawa slammed the door to the teacher's lounge open, startling everyone inside. With an evil grin, he firmly steered both Izuku and Katsuki into the room, both still latched to each other, before declaring, I found Izuku a friend. Mic slammed his hands on his desk while ectoplasm began to enter the room behind Aizawa. Shouter Aizawa. I told you, taking an unattended child is illegal. Without a word, ectoplasm once again left the room without a comment. Rolling his eyes, Aizawa continued to nudge the children into the room. I had permission from the kid's mom. It's okay, Mic-sensei. Izuku interrupted, dragging a shell-shocked Katsuki closer to the other heroes in the room. Kaken is my friend. We grew up together. And Auntie Mitsuki is talking to Principal Nedzu right now. Midnight practically squealed from her desk, jumping up and darting over to the pair. Aren't you both the cutest? Dragging them both into a hug, she cooed, Izuku-kun, why didn't you tell us you had such an adorable friend? Staring with wide eyes, Katsuki loudly whispered, Deku, how many heroes do you know? Izuku blinked. A lot. Nem, let the kids breathe, Aizawa drawled, moving to forcefully pry the children from the now pouting hero. I'm not sure if the feral one bites yet. Snipe finally spoke up. I'm sorry, did you say feral? Oi! Bakugo growled, clearly offended. Aizawa blinked. Yes. Feral. Patting the snarling blonde child on the head, he added, I haven't gotten confirmation yet on vaccines, but I'm fairly certain he does not have rabies. I don't have rabies, you demon hobo. Oh my god, Mic practically cried, burying his face in his hands. Green Bean Protection Squad Wynant uploaded an image of Katsuki and Deku playing what looks like tag in the teacher's lounge. Wynant uploaded an image of Snipe trying to look intimidating, playing the villain while Katsuki and Izuku braced themselves in heroic poses, ready to pounce. Wynant uploaded an image of Snipe pinned to the ground in defeat, Katsuki standing on his back mid-cackle. Izuku looking at the blonde with the brightest smile 𝙎𝙧𝙮𝙧𝙮, uploaded an image of the two sitting with a notebook full of hero signatures, Katsuki grinning ferally at his new collection while Izuku beams at his side, pointing towards what looks like present MIC's signature 𝙎𝙧𝙮𝙧𝙮, uploaded an image of Katsuki standing on a table, mid-shout towards a dead-faced Aizawa while Izuku hovers next to the table, trying and failing to calm the angry blonde. Present MIC could just barely be seen stepping into frame 𝙎𝙧𝙮𝙧𝙮, uploaded an image of Katsuki launching off the table at Aizawa, tiny explosions crackling from his palms while Izuku and present MIC panic in the background 𝙎𝙧𝙮𝙧𝙮, uploaded an image of Aizawa grinning evilly at Katsuki who hung from the ceiling via his capture scarf. Said blonde is flailing with an eye visibly twitching while Izuku watches helplessly from below. Present MIC stands to the side with a defeated look, seeming as if he has given up on the situation. 𝙎𝙧𝙮𝙧𝙮. I love our new kidnapped child that Aizawa brought us. Granny, our what? Uncle Screm, he's not actually kidnapped. Uncle Screm, we think. Space Aunt, I am concerned. Grandfather Satan, I can confirm that the child has not been kidnapped. His mother is currently in a meeting with myself as well as Sir Nighteye and Detective Tsukochi. The two were close to the Midoriyas in the past, and we are settling details regarding our ward. Grandfather Satan at Dadzawa, seeing as how attached the two boys were today, young Bakugo will likely wish to spend the night. His mother asked if that would be possible. Dadzawa, fine. Dadzawa, only because Izuku is going to pass out from dehydration if he cries anymore today. Dadzawa, but I'm demanding backup from either at Dadmite or at Uncle Fortune Cookie. Uncle Fortune Cookie, I will likely be busy tonight working on the information Bakugo-san provided about the Aldera investigation, but Yagi should be available tonight. Dadmite, insert a gif of a disturbingly close-up shot of All Might's face and the caption I am here. Uncle Shotgun, speak of the devil, Dadmite, we have another child. Uncle Fortune Cookie, we are not keeping him. Dadmite, oh he seems like a fine young man. I am so glad that young Izuku has a friend. I would be honored to have them stay with myself if you need a break, Aizawa. Dadzawa, as if I would trust you alone with the two of them. Uncle BLD Bag, as if anyone should trust either of you alone with children. Uncle Fortune Cookie, Bakugo-san has informed us that Katsuki is a bit of a handful, and given Izuku's growing curiosity and confidence as of late, having the two of you there should prevent any mischief. Dadzawa, I'm sure we can handle two small children. Even if one is feral. Uncle BLD Bag, feral. Why not? Oh, that reminds me, why not has changed Uncle Fortune Cookie's username to Papa Fortune Cookie. Papa Fortune Cookie, was there a reason for this change? Uncle Screm, the little listeners had a very interesting conversation today when they didn't think anyone could hear them. Why not? Uploaded a video shows Katsuki and Izuku sprawled on their stomachs under a makeshift blanket fort. A sign can clearly be seen with a crudely written Lord Explosion Murder and Deku Agency. No boring extras or hobos allowed, complete with tiny explosions drawn on as well as what looked like a cross between All Might and a bunny rabbit face. So you live with the hobo? Katsuki asks, grumbling the words as if they offended him as he continued to draw what looked like a hero costume in his notebook. Izuku hums quietly, smiling softly to himself as he works on a different hero costume drawing. Here. Well, sort of. Ha. Sort of. I live with Aizawa-sensei and Mirai-san and Toshinori-san. Izuku chirps. They each have a room for me to stay in and are super nice and take really good care of me. Huffing, Katsuki narrows his eyes and stares at the boy quietly for a minute, before cautiously asking, so, are they your dads now? Izuku visibly jolted, head whipping towards his friend with a wide-eyed look. What dash? They aren't, I don't think dash. Snatching up a pillow, Izuku buried his face into it just as his cheeks began to burn bright red, traveling up to his ears. Oi! It's not a big deal. Katsuki snaps, though the concern is clear on his face. They either are or they aren't. After a beat, Izuku slowly brought his face out of his pillow, then quietly, as if sharing a deep secret, Izuku whispered, I don't know, but I would like them to be. The video begins to shake, as if the person holding the camera is resisting the urge to jump up and down, and the recording cuts off before the boys can say anything else. Papa Fortune Cookie, oh my. Space Aunt, that is absolutely precious. Uncle Screm, I nearly activated my quirk squealing the first time I saw it. Wynant, Aizawa. XE is broken Elmer Wynant, uploaded an image shows Aizawa staring wide-eyed at his phone, a look of awe and complete panic on his face. Uncle 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧𝙮. I mean, is anyone surprised? The boy practically worships the ground those three walk on. Uncle Shotgun, I feel like we should be concerned about how quiet at Dad might has been. Uncle Detective, he's fine. He's just crying too much to be able to type out a reply. Uncle Detective, he's rambling about my boy and something about an emergency credit card. Uncle Diglett, can someone tell me why I just found Nighteye sitting in the middle of the hallway staring at nothing? He's not responding to me. Space Aunt, scroll up. Uncle Diglett, okay Uncle Diglett, oh was this not a known thing? Uncle Screm, oh no, it was known. Uncle Screm, by everyone but those three. Uncle Diglett, are okay. Wynant, emotional constipation at its finest. Uncle 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧𝙮, yet again, I wonder who trusted them with a child. Papa Fortune Cookie, I beg your pardon. Dadzawa, meet me in the Fing Pit. Vlad Dadmite, excuse me. Uncle Screm, OSE Uncle Shotgun, Vlad do you have a death wish? Uncle 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧𝙮, I feel like I just lost 10 years on my life, Christ Grandfather Satan. I would like to remind everyone that murder is not allowed on school property. And causing bodily harm to a fellow pro might disallow you from being eligible to keep custody of Izuku. Dadzawa, you are fine. Vlad lives another day. Papa Fortune Cookie, noted. Dad might. Papa Fortune Cookie, Toshinori. Dad might, fine. Why not? We need a days since the dad squad nearly committed murder in Izuku's honor sign. Grandfather Satan, ordered. Uncle Diglett, welp, Dadmite. Well, I am on my way back to my apartment. At Dadzawa, if you would like to meet me there with the boys, I will order takeout tonight. Dadzawa, okay, be there in 10. Space Aunt, question, has anyone told the friend that one of Izuku-kuin's dads is All Might? Uncle Shotgun, oh boy. Dadzawa, well this should be entertaining. Uncle Screm, shouter. Dadzawa, I'm sure everything will be fine. 10 minutes later Dadzawa, update, he went mute for like a solid 30 seconds then looked Izuku dead in the eyes, whispered, what the F? And promptly fainted. Uncle Screm, shouter. Dadzawa, don't worry, I've got everything covered. Space Aunt, so he's okay. Dadzawa, oh well yeah I think so. But I meant that I got it on video. Uncle 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧𝙮. Granny, I am on my way. Papa Fortune Cookie, oh not again Uncle Shotgun, again. Dadmite, young Izuku also fainted upon meeting me. This tends to be a thing with young children. Why not? This just in, All Might is responsible for the mass uptick in child concussions. Uncle Diglett, I heard MIC screaming and I should have known it was this god-forsaken chat. When Katsuki finally wakes up, he stares blearily at the ceiling before slowly turning his head to the side. He's apparently sprawled across a very comfortable couch, and sitting on the ground just in front of the couch was Izuku, who absently scribbled away in one of his journals. Blinking slowly, Katsuki managed to ask, why did I just dream that All Might was one of your dads? Izuku froze. The front door to the apartment burst open. I am here. Yagi shouted with a broad grin, brandishing nearly half a dozen bags filled to the brim. With takeout food. Cautiously, Izuku replies, that wasn't a dream, Kaken. Katsuki makes a sound halfway between a murderous cat and a dying walrus. Of course, everything was awkward at first, with young Katsuki fainting the night before, but after the boy woke up and Yagi presented him with food, he seemed to deal with his hero worship far better than Izuku. Yagi nearly choked on his egg roll when the boy loudly declared, since you're Deku's dad now, that means you're my uncle. Yagi didn't know how to respond other than to awkwardly reply, thank you for letting me know. Izuku looked close to fainting. Katsuki only seemed emboldened by this, grinning in a way that made Yagi believe Aizawa was onto something with the feral thing. You don't mind Deku calling you dad, right? The small green-haired child full-on squeaked, and Yagi could not help but immediately reply, I already think of him as my son, so, and of course Aizawa walked in as Izuku burst into tears. After assuring the overprotective man that Izuku was fine and that these were happy tears, followed by Katsuki interjecting with, I don't really want a hobo for an uncle, but Deku thinks you're a good dad too, so I guess I'm stuck with you. Aizawa practically blue-screened at that, while Izuku became a stuttering mess. Things calmed down after that, the boys eventually falling asleep in a pile, and both he and Aizawa carefully cleaned up the remnants of the takeout boxes while the two dozed. A few pictures were also taken, for important reasons. Hellion chat let me sleep 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧𝙮 uploaded an image of Katsuki and Izuku passed out asleep in a pile of blankets, surrounded by various takeout boxes and an All Might movie playing in the background. Night. I would die for these two, 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧𝙮, same. Sonic, WTF did 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧 kidnap another child? Let me sleep 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, technically no. Night, I keep forgetting you aren't in the teacher's chat 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, we made sure that 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧 did not bring home a random stray child. This is an old friend of the green bean. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, and yes, the boy's parents know he's here. Let me sleep 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, why does everyone keep thinking I'm just randomly kidnapping children? 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, maybe it's the fact that you just randomly show up with children and poorly explain how you acquired them. Let me sleep 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, explaining requires effort. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧. Sonic, well, I'm glad that little Izuku has a friend. Sonic, and that this is legal. Sonic, oh that reminds me Sonic, I've been meaning to ask, do you think Izuku would be up for meeting Tenya? I think they are the same age. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, wait, that's an amazing idea. Night, I'm squealing. More friends for the green bean. Let me sleep 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, Tenya's not feral, so it should be fine. Sonic, since when is being feral a problem? Night, ignore him. Oh, and I should bring my niece too. It could be like a big play date for them all. Let me sleep 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, I'm adding Tensai to the teacher chat. You all can fuss about this there. Sonic, wait, what? Green Bean and Feral Child Protection Squad 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧 has added Ida Tensai to the chat. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧 has changed Ida Tensai to Uncle Sonic. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, Tensai has another child to offer up. Uncle Beelzebub, Christ, Aizawa, do you have to make it sound like he's sacrificing a kid? Uncle Shotgun, to be fair, Izuku does tend to go into analysis and experiment mode every time he meets someone new. Uncle Diglett, so is this just no longer a teacher's chat? Why not since Nighteye and Tsukochi. Uncle 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, we have more to talk about Izuku than any of our other classes, so, and it's not like we ever use the chat for sensitive material. Uncle Diglett, okay, true. Uncle Big, can we get back to the part where Aizawa said that his friend is offering up a whole but child? Uncle Sonic, I can assure you that I am not offering Tenya as a sacrifice. Uncle Sonic, I meant like a play date. Tenya is 8, and Izuku is 7, right? And he wants to be a hero too, so I think they would get along. Space Aunt, oh, more friends. That would be perfect. Uncle 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, and Nem mentioned a niece, right? Why not? I have to talk to her parents, but I'm sure they would agree. And she is 7 and interested in heroes too. Uncle Shotgun, so basically we are just collecting Aizawa's future class. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, why would I get stuck with them all? Uncle Shotgun, because you would literally shank someone if they got to teach Izuku instead of you, and you know the bean would be sad if he's not in a class with his friends. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, god damn it 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, fine. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, but no more. 3 is enough friends. 2 hours later. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, I'm amending the rule to 4 friends. Uncle Shotgun, why not? 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, what happened? Uncle Lie Detector, I sense a legal headache coming on. Uncle 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, Aizawa 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, I swear to God 𝙎𝙪𝙢. So, remember me asking about taking unattended children. Uncle Lie Detector, called it. I'm already on my way to UA. Uncle Diglett, holy 𝙎𝙪 Yamada is going to break my eardrums at this rate, what happened now? Uncle Diglett, Aizawa, what the F 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧? In my defense, Dad Might is the one that actually took the kid Papa Fortune Cookie. Yagi did what Dad Might. I regret nothing. Papa Fortune Cookie, Yagi Toshinori Dad Might. The child was muzzled, Mirai. Dad Might. There was no way I was leaving him there. Uncle 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, he was what? Why not? 𝙎𝙪𝙧 Uncle Sonic, I'm on my way. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙧, why not? He's fine, show, I'm with him. You worry about the boy. Grandfather Satan, Yagi, Aizawa, would you and the boy meet in my office? We can discuss details further once the detective has arrived. Papa Fortune Cookie, may I join as well? Dadzawa, the kid is skittish as hell, so maybe wait a bit. He's fairly attached to Izuku and Katsuki, but he's wary of me and Yagi. Papa Fortune Cookie, very well, I will wait in the staff meeting room. Dadzawa, I'll give you all an update as soon as I can. Papa Nighteye today was supposed to be a fairly easy day. Yagi had no doctor's appointments scheduled, having finalized most of the details for the surgery on his end and simply awaited the scheduled date. This gave him his first true day off to spend with young Izuku in a while, and to make matters better, he could spend time with the boy's friend as well. So, since both the boys' trips to the park had been cut short the day before, Yagi reasoned with Aizawa that visiting again would be a wonderful idea. Despite Aizawa's reservations about dealing with people again, Yagi was beginning to grow a tad concerned for the man's aversion to interacting with the general public. He managed to convince the introverted man that he could handle any potential interactions. Aizawa did seem wary. How are you going to do that being, well, you? With a deep chuckle, he merely explained, it's far easier to hide from the public than you would think. And that was what led to him sitting on a park bench with Aizawa while dressed in tacky sunglasses, a hat with fake versions of his hair tufts on top, and a t-shirt with his face plastered on the front. I can't believe that worked, Aizawa groaned, burying his face in his hands. With a wry grin, Yagi stretched, only to wince slightly when he pulled at his wound. I've been getting away with this for years. Not even bothering to uncover his face, the tired hero muttered irritably, people are so DMN stupid. Before he could reply, young Katsuki came barreling out of a bush towards them. Move! Your buttes! He snapped, skidding to a halt in front of them. Deku needs help. And that is what led to their current predicament. Huddled under a bush, tightly gripping Izuku's hand, was a terrified lavender-haired boy, one with obvious signs of neglect due to his thin frame and dirty clothes, and that was completely discounting the muzzle on his face. The boy had immediately shoved himself away from them when they tried to approach, though his grip on Izuku's hand remained and only tightened in response to seeing them. Izuku spoke softly to the boy. It's okay, they are heroes. They can help you. When the boy made no attempt to move, just staring at them warily, Izuku continued. They're also my dads, they won't hurt you, I promise. Yagi had to control his reaction to hearing the boy so easily call him dad, trying to focus on remaining as unthreatening as possible. Hello, young man. Reaching up slowly to slip off his hat and glasses, he could not help but chuckle at the bewildered look on the boy's face. Though he was a bit less bulky in the past few months of limited hero work, All Might was still fairly recognizable to anyone in Japan. I am here to help you, should you let us. Katsuki had crawled into the bush by this point, shoving his way past the two pros to sit next to the muzzled boy who he did not seem to mind the angry blonde. Deku has these two wrapped around his finger. Trust me, they look intimidating but are things soft as SHT. I feel like I should be scolding you for your language, Aizawa muttered, eyes narrowing at the challenging grin Bakugo shot him. Slowly, with a still hesitant look on his face, the muzzled boy edged forward, Izuku's hand still held tightly in his grip. Yagi kneeled down, Aizawa doing the same, before he reached out to offer a hand to the distrustful-looking boy. And thankfully, the boy took his hand. After removing the god-forsaken muzzle, which they unfortunately could not destroy and had to keep for evidence, they whisked the lavender-haired boy off to UA. The entire time he kept shooting them guarded looks and always held tight to either Izuku or Katsuki's hand, which the blonde surprisingly did not complain about. They had yet to get the boy to speak or answer any questions, and they tried not to pry too much. Once sequestered away in Recovery Girl's office who gave a quick exam, she pulled Aizawa and Yagi to the side with a grim look. It's like Izuku all over again, though this looks more long-term, and of course the muzzle scars. Aizawa practically growled while a rare scowl crossed Yagi's face. How can so many people treat children this way? Scoffing, the Erasure hero snipped, the world has always been rotten, All Might, you just can't see it from your pillar of peace. Enough of this. Recovery Girl snapped, jabbing her cane at the pair. No bickering in front of the boys. They are all going to be stressed enough as is, and they need your support. You two are as good as Izuku's fathers, and you are the first points of contact for the boy after long-term neglect and possible abuse. So, watch how you behave. Yes, She glanced back at the boys before sighing. I will note that when I healed him from the muzzle cuts, I could not sense any other injuries, thankfully. Also, no damage to his vocal cords, so his silence might be selective mutism. Aizawa let out a hiss of air. Yamada suffers from that on occasion from when his school used to muzzle him. Be gentle with the boy, recovery girl pleaded. I know you are capable of it because I've seen you both with Izuku, but you will need to be more so with this one. His trust will not be so easily earned. The boy would not speak. He practically glared at his lap, jaw clenched, while Nezu sat patiently across from him, sipping tea. Izuku had crawled up into the large chair with the quiet boy, holding his hand tightly in silent support, while Katsuki stood beside the chair, arms crossed and scowl plastered across his face, giving his own version of support as if he were a guard dog, ready to lash out at anyone who so much as glanced at the pair wrong. With a small smile, Nezu asked gently, "If you are not comfortable with speaking, would you mind writing?" The boy's eyes narrowed suspiciously as the principal laid a dry erase board and marker out on his desk. "We just need to verify some things in order to have you moved into our custody." The boy made no moves toward the board and marker. Aizawa and Yagi, from their spots near the door, exchanged glances, one concerned, the other very tired. Eventually, Izuku moved forward, picking up the board to place in his lap. "They only want to help, I promise." He gave the boy's hand an encouraging squeeze. Still the boy said nothing, and slowly, Izuku's face grew more somber before speaking again. When my mom died, I was with a not-so-nice family for a while." Bakugo's head whipped towards the little green-haired boy while the other adults in the room tensed. Outside of sessions with Hound Dog, Izuku never spoke about his mother or his brief stint in his foster home. While Hound Dog had assured them that this was just a trauma response and eventually the boy would open up, they had all begun to think that would never happen, but apparently it was happening, and it was happening right now. Tears began to pool in Izuku's eyes as the boy's eyes grew wide. "All I wanted was a hero to come save me, but I didn't think one would ever come. I'm quirkless, and all everyone ever told me was that it was a miracle that my own mother even cared about me, let alone loved me. How could anyone care enough to come save me?" It might have been Aizawa's imagination, but he believed he could see Bakugo's eyes mist up ever so slightly. But then Sir Nighteye came. He said the hero's name almost reverently, as if he still could not believe it himself. "He came and took me away and spoke kindly to me and treated me like I was equal to him. And apparently, I am. He and All Might and Eraserhead and everybody else tell me every day that I'm a person who deserves to be treated like everyone else, and that no one deserves to be treated like they are less." Yagi was near sobbing now, and even Aizawa was close to tearing up. Izuku leaned into the boy's side, resting his head on his shoulder. His voice dropped to a whisper, but his reassuring tone was clear as day. "They'll help you. They won't let anyone hurt you like that ever again. You just have to let them help. We deserve to be people." Yep, Yagi was now muffling full-on sobs and Aizawa was viciously scrubbing at his eyes, which was understandable. Bakugo just stared at Izuku, looking so very lost and small, before reaching out and snatching up the boy's free hand, gripping to it tightly. Slowly, the other boy's shoulders began to lose their tension as his stare dug holes into his lap, but eventually, all the tension just melted. His shoulders slumped, his body curled into Izuku's side, the boy resting his head atop the fuzzy green curls. And then, he lifted his gaze and spoke. "My name is Shinso Hitoshi. Green Bean and Feral Child Protection Squad Grandfather Satan has changed the chat name to Green Bean and Feral Children Protection Squad. Grandfather Satan, young Shinso is now a ward of UA. After he is more comfortable and meets everyone, we will pick out a proper official guardian for him. For now, he will be staying with Izuku and his guardians. Please give them some space as Shinso-kun adjusts. Uncle Diglett, oh god they did steal a child, Dad might, no regrets. Dadzawa, you are still sobbing like a beach. Dad might, so are you. Dadzawa, SHUT. The first thing they did after interviewing Hitoshi was to call Katsuki's parents. Okay, well, technically the first thing they did was settle the boys in at Aizawa's apartment and then send Aizawa off to buy copious amounts of takeout food. Then, they had Sir Nighteye call Katsuki's parents. You want to keep him another night? Nighteye let out a sigh. It seems that he and Izuku ran into a neglected child while at the park today. The child is, for lack of a better word, traumatized from his foster home and latched onto both of the boys. Glancing up towards where the three boys were curled up on a futon together in his living room, watching a random hero documentary, he continued. It stirred up some painful memories for Izuku from his brief stint in the foster system. Also, Katsuki seems 2 seconds from a meltdown anytime we even remotely suggest separating the three. Hound Dog said that they will likely be better by morning time, but, say no more, the Bakugo matriarch replied firmly. I know he's safe with you, and I can't in good conscience separate those boys after everything. I do want to meet the newbie once he's settled, however. It's a miracle my brat attached to anyone other than Izuku. Once he's settled, Nighteye emphasized, a soft smile growing on his face as he watched Izuku and Katsuki hype up the quiet boy about some super moving up and coming hero performed on screen. I really do appreciate this. We all do. He heard her bark out a laugh on the other end of the line. You kidding me? You know how hard it is to find someone to babysit the brat. Apparently, I needed fully trained heroes all along. Don't think I won't be taking advantage of this. A few more pleasantries were exchanged before the call finally ended. By that point, Aizawa came strolling through the door, arms laden with bags of takeout. With a heavy sigh, Nighteye remarked, the boys have been living off of unhealthy takeout for the past 2 days. They deserve it, Aizawa quipped easily, dumping the bags on the dining room table with a smirk. And besides, this has some veggies in it. The food is all fried and absolutely drenched in sauce. But it does have veggies mixed in. Nighteye gave up and began helping Aizawa take out all the various containers. How do you even afford this? Bold of you to assume I didn't swipe the blonde idiot's credit card the moment he moved in and memoized the card info. A brief knock on the door, and said blonde idiot poked his head into the apartment, apparently having finished up his statement with Tsukochi. The man had arrived to UA as promised in the group messages and even brought all the proper fostering paperwork along with the usual incident reports. It made Nighteye question what led to his life being like this to see that the forms were already partially filled out, as if he predicted this happening long ago. Yagi lit up at the sight of the food, quickly entering the apartment and bolting towards the table, only to have Mirai smack his hands away. You know you aren't allowed to eat this, Toshinori. The blonde looked like a kicked puppy, but Nighteye did not budge. Your surgery is in only 2 weeks, I will not risk you compromising it over junk food. With that, the man strides towards the kitchen, presumably to find something that Yagi was approved to eat. Yagi gave Aizawa a sad look, pleading for understanding and a bit of leniency. The man simply looked him dead in the eyes, picked up a greasy fried egg roll that looked like it came from junk food heaven and took a large bite. He never once broke eye contact. Yagi had never been so tempted to become a villain before. Eventually, after assuring that Hitoshi was comfortable in Sir Nighteye's presence, Aizawa and Yagi bid goodnight to the boys and headed out to their respective apartments. Aizawa had a patrol to get to, and Yagi needed to sleep. He also did not want to continue staring mournfully at the piles of junk food that he could not have. Later, while the boys were munching away on their takeout, they finally drifted to the topic of favorite heroes. I don't know, Izuku mumbled as he munched on his egg roll. All Might is still sort of my favorite, but ever since my dads took me in, I kind of like Eraserhead and Sir Nighteye just as much. Katsuki scoffed. They're your dads. It's like a requirement or something for them to be your favorites. You need to pick someone else. Pouting, the green-haired boy sighed. Well, then I guess right now it would be Miruko. Hitoshi perked up. Oh, I think I've heard of her. Izuku practically started vibrating in place. Yeah. She just debuted last year, and she went straight into heroing. She doesn't have a set agency and travels from city to city wherever crime rates are higher, and she has an unprecedented win rate. She's known for her quick takedowns, And though a lot of people argue that she's too rough, I think she's amazing. She can take out a villain with a strength enhancement quirk in one kick. Izuku's words had just grown faster and faster as the boy practically jumped in place, Hitoshi looking mildly overwhelmed, having not been used to the boy, while Katsuki just nodded along. I have been doing a study of her quirk and fighting style with Nezu recently. I hope I get to meet her one day. Considering your dad's, that could probably happen, Katsuki remarked. Slumping over, Izuku glumly replied, but she travels so much and works mostly alone. You can still hope, Hitoshi offered cautiously. You might get lucky. Scratching at the side of his head, he carefully offered, well, speaking of favorites, mine is present MIC. Both of the other boys froze. Really? Izuku asked in awe. I know it's a bit of a weird choice, that's amazing though. Izuku excitedly interjected. Present MIC is such a good hero and has amazing quirk control. He's super smart too and really nice, and wait, he lives right above us, I can. The moment the green-haired boy started to get up to take off, he was immediately tackled by Hitoshi. No, it's fine, but, Izuku began, trying in vain to wiggle free. But you can meet your favorite hero. Please, Izuku. Hitoshi practically begged. Maybe another day, but I don't think my heart could take it right now. Squinting, Izuku stared at the other boy for a bit, as if trying to determine whether or not this was an act, but eventually, he relented. Okay, Hitoshi finally let go, both moving to sit back on the futon. But he is really nice and would love that you're a fan. Another day, Hitoshi relented, seeming relieved that he would not have to face his idol right now. The bombastic blonde took that as his cue to change the subject. Well, my favorite is All Might. Katsuki loudly proclaimed, jumping to his feet and puffing out his chest proudly. Izuku squinted. You just said I couldn't pick my dad's, and you already said that All Might was your uncle. So he can't count. Tsuke, uncles don't count, Katsuki griped, waving off Izuku's grumbling before diving right back into his impassioned speech. He's the best and never loses. One day, I'm gonna be stronger than him. Then I'll be the #1 hero. Hitoshi couldn't help but snicker. You sure about that? Hell yes. Gesturing towards the little green-haired boy staring at him with a smile plastered across his face, he boldly proclaimed, and Aizu is gonna be my hero partner. So, he's gonna be #2. Plopping back down on the futon, he huffed. You can be #3 and be a part of our agency if you want. Raising a brow, the purple-haired boy bitterly muttered, you don't even know what my quirk is. Doesn't matter, Katsuki replied, picking up his bowl and scooping in a large mouthful of food, chewing quickly before elaborating. So long as you train and SHT and show the villains who's boss, that's the only important part. And Aizu is super smart. He can help you figure out tricks with your quirk. Kaken. Izuku squeaked, covering his face with his hands. I'm not that smart. The blonde stared incredulously at his friend. Izuku. You're being personally taught by Nezu. He's like, the smartest creature on the planet. That doesn't mean I'm smart. Bullshit. Still, Hitoshi interjected, sensing that the two would bicker for a while if allowed, he bluntly states, even having a genius like Izuku teaching me wouldn't change the fact that my quirk is bad. Both of the boys stared at Hitoshi in confusion while Izuku tilted his head. Bad. Yes, bad. Stabbing at his food in irritation, he snipped, I was muzzled for a reason. I have, his voice trailed off, staring at his food solemnly. I have a villain's quirk. Bullshit. It was not Katsuki who swore that time. Both of the other boys stared in wide-eyed shock at the tiny green-haired boy scowled, green eyes flashing brightly with righteous indignation. There's no such thing as a villainous quirk. He snapped. Anyone who told you that, the people who hurt you, they're shitheads, Katsuki offered cautiously. Shitheads? Yes, that. A door down the hall slammed open. Izuku. Did you just swear? Jumping to his feet as Sir Nighteye rushed into the room, Izuku's face went bright red, but he didn't stand down. Sir. Hitoshi thinks that villainous quirks are real. Hitoshi was staring silently, still in shock over the Sunshine Boy swearing, while Nighteye's brows furrowed and he declared, "Of course there is no such thing." Izuku spun around to his new friend, beaming brightly over the fact that one of his favorite adults agreed with him. "See? Your quirk can't be villainous cause there is no such thing." That drew Nighteye's concern off of the fact that Izuku swore and onto the other issue at hand. "Hitoshi, do you really believe that?" The boy in question shrunk in on himself. "It's what everyone says when they find out," Katsuki huffed. "Those extras don't know what the F they are talking about." With a determined glare, Katsuki demanded, "Tell us what it is." "We'll show you." "No." Hitoshi snapped, looking desperate. "Please. I don't want you to hate me too." Kneeling down next to his friend, Izuku calmly replies, "Hitoshi, we're your friends. We would never hate you." "Yes you will. Everyone always does." He chokes back a sob, clutching tightly to his hair. "My quirk is villainous, and that means one day, I'll be a villain too. I was told that when I was your age." And everyone froze, turning slowly to see a familiar-looking man with long blonde hair in the doorway to the apartment. Hitoshi stared, confused as to where he'd seen this man before, one dressed in bright yellow pajamas. But then, it clicked. Present MIC. Today had not exactly been a pleasant day for Hisashi. The first half was fine, good even. His classes were behaving, and a few of the third years even replied to his enthusiastic questions. He knew his personality was a lot to handle, it was sort of his whole gig, so he never minded the teens being too nervous to reply. But whenever a few chimed in, it always warmed his heart. Sadly, the pleasant mood did not last very long. It was sort of an open secret that anything to do with muzzles was a big no-no for the voice hero. They greatly upset him at worst and set him on edge at the very least. Nedzu even added it to the list of triggers for the staff to avoid using whenever possible. When he first joined the staff, Hound Dog was very cautious to ensure that Hisashi would be fine seeing the man out and about in his costume's muzzle, not wanting to trigger him. And while it made Hisashi uneasy at first, seeing that the man could still talk and easily remove the muzzle at will made him relax over time. While he was infinitely better than when he was a kid, talking about muzzles in general still tended to upset him. However, he could manage his nerves most of the time. But finding out that a child was being muzzled, things went south fast. Unpleasant memories were dragged to the surface, and Hisashi found himself having his first panic attack over muzzles in years. Thankfully, Nemurai appeared at his side within minutes, and after coaxing him out of his mind's attempts to disassociate, he found himself being ushered out of the school to his on-campus apartment. An hour later, they were both curled up together on the couch under his favorite oversized blanket, both wearing some of his comfier sweats and hoodies while watching pre-Quirk era I Love Lucy episodes. Soon after, Tensai arrived still in costume, quickly shucking it all off and also commandeering some of Hisashi's clothes to join in on the pile. Even Shouter eventually even managed to join them, but only for a quick check-in before patrol. The man seemed guilty that he was unable to come sooner, but Hisashi waved him off, saying that the kids needed him and that Nemurai and Tensai had it covered. After assuring that he was fine, Shouter eventually caved and headed out to his patrol shift. So, they resumed vegging out, with no intentions of moving anytime soon. That is, until they heard shouting from the apartment below. Nighteye's apartment. The one where the kids were staying, Hisashi, with fried nerves and anxiety still simmering under the surface from earlier, was the first to launch to his feet and barrel out the door. His mind assumed all the worst-case scenarios, fearful that someone may be attacking the kids, and he did not pause in his stride at all as he heard Nemurai and Tensai shout after him, struggling to untangle themselves from the blanket and give chase. Darting down the stairs, his feet nearly slid out from under him as he pushed open the door with no hesitation, only to find Izuku and Katsuki huddled around an unfamiliar purple-haired boy who looked like he was in the middle of a breakdown. Mirai was hovering to the side, clearly looking at a loss as to what to say, glancing up to acknowledge the hero with worried eyes. Izuku was just beginning to speak, telling the purple-haired kid, "Hitoshi, we're your friends. We would never hate you." "Yes you will. Everyone always does." The boy was clearly panicking, clutching at his hair with a painful-looking grip, refusing to look the others in the eye as he curled more tightly in on himself. "My quirk is villainous, And that means one day, I'll be a villain too. I was told that when I was your age. The words left him before he could really process what to think, and suddenly, all eyes were on him. Nemirai and Tensai had just come barreling in at that point, frozen behind him and silent. The boy in question stared slack-jawed at him, eyes wide and a familiar look crossing his face. A look more desperate and awestruck than he was used to, but still something he could comprehend as the boy reverently whispered, "Present am I see." He couldn't help but smile brightly, loving that the kid recognized him even out of costume. If he wasn't sure that the kid was a fan before, this just solidified it. "Wow, you sure are sharp, little listener. Not many people would know who I am looking like this." The boy quickly became a blushing mess, ducking his head into his knees to hide his face. Izuku was grinning brightly beside the boy, practically vibrating in place. "Hitoshi," Izuku whispered, though it was still very easy to understand the green bean, all while shaking Hitoshi's shoulder. "Isn't it great? It's your favorite hero." And oh, hearing that did something to Hisashi's heart. Katsuki flashed Hisashi something that seemed like a "don't F this up" look before turning his attention to Hitoshi, whose entire face was still hidden, but his very bright red ears were clearly visible. "The cockatoo ain't gonna hurt you." Nighteye quietly muttered, "Izuku better not learn any more swear words, so help me." Before Hisashi could ask what he meant, "Little Izuku isn't capable of swearing, it's physically impossible," Hitoshi's face popped up to look at Katsuki and vehemently proclaim, "I know he wouldn't." Lavender eyes turned towards him, and he once again saw the awe and disbelief and something almost like fear in his eyes. Swallowing heavily, Hitoshi managed a very soft, "Hello." Taking this as permission to move, Hisashi approached slowly, still smiling warmly at the slightly trembling boy as he moved to sit in front of him. "Hi there, little listener." He still had a death grip on his knees, face partially hidden as he stared at the man. Izuku had a comforting hand on his shoulder while both he and Katsuki flanked Hitoshi, offering their silent support. Hisashi simply kept up his smile, waiting patiently, not wanting to stress the poor boy and overwhelm him when he was clearly already a little distressed. Hitoshi, for his part, didn't leave him waiting for too long. "They called you a villain," he blurted out, then seemed to instantly regret it, slapping his hands over his mouth and looking ready to apologize. Hisashi did not give him a chance to apologize, however, instantly replying, "Yes, they did. I knew many not nice people when I was growing up." Hands tightening in the fabric of his breathes, Hitoshi carefully asked, "Why? Your quirk is so heroic." "No, it's not," he gently but firmly interjected. As Hitoshi began to wilt, he quickly explained, "My quirk isn't heroic, but it's not villainous either." Seeing the boy's confusion, he asked, "Hitoshi, if someone was to hit someone else with a stick, is the stick bad?" "No." His smile brightened. "Exactly. Because a stick is a tool. It can be used to hurt someone, but it can also be used as a cane to walk, or to tie a sheet on to make a flag. Tools aren't good or bad. And quirks, they are just tools you can be born with. Nothing more, nothing less." Hitoshi's grip tightened more, now clearly digging through the fabric to his own skin as he struggled to not cry, his hands shaking. "Then why do people say that? Why do they say that it's bad?" The silent question of "why do they say I'm bad too" hung heavily in the air. Because people can be bad, Hitoshi. Calling someone a villain for something out of their control, Hisashi's smile turned sad. The kind of people who say things like that are the bad ones. Holding out a hand, giving the boy plenty of time to object, Hisashi gently pried the boy's hands from his legs, holding them gently so that he would not hurt himself. "You are not a villain, Hitoshi. You're just a kid." And then, the tears finally broke free, Hitoshi letting out broken, heaving sobs as Hisashi gently pulled him into a hug. Blinking back his own tears, he tucked the boy's face into his shoulder. No child should ever be made to feel otherwise. It felt like ages before Hitoshi finally calmed, but in reality, it was only a short few minutes. Nemirai and Tensai had been ushered to the kitchen by Mirai not long after the crying started, all setting about the important task of brewing tea and making, in Tensai's words, the best DMN hot chocolate in all of Japan. And by best, he meant instant with milk and way too many marshmallows, because that was all Mirai had in his kitchen. Instant hot chocolate is a sin, Tensai hissed under his breath, still minorly insulted that the pro did not have any real chocolate in his apartment. Be happy we have that, Mirai snipped back, shoving more mugs at the pro. You never had to survive Izuku after eating a chocolate bar. Be gracious that I am sharing my marshmallow stash in the first place. Nemirai seemed concerned. Will it be okay to give the green bean this? Sighing heavily, Mirai replied, just give him only a few marshmallows. It's late enough that he should be too tired to wreak too much havoc. Stirring a cup that was notably lighter than the other hot chocolates, he also quietly muttered, I also halved the amount of hot chocolate mix in his mug. Izuku and Katsuki, for their part, had stayed firmly at Hisashi and Hitoshi's sides, watching the purple-haired boy like a pair of hawks, ready to swoop in if they felt like Hisashi was not doing a good enough job for even a second. Hisashi found it both cute and minorly terrifying being scrutinized by the pair. Mostly, he was nervous about Izuku. He still fears what Nezu might be teaching that boy. A short while after drinks had been passed around, the children and Tensai, despite his complaints about instant being horrendous, enjoying their hot chocolate while the rest of the adults sipped their tea, Hitoshi finally spoke. Shifting nervously next to Hisashi from the spot where they had relocated to on the couch, he refused to meet anyone's eyes while he explained, eyes fixed pointedly on his drink. It's called brainwashing. The cup trembled a bit in his hands as he continued. I ask a question with my quirk on, and then if you reply, I can order you to do stuff. Shoulders hunching inward, he waited for the unease, the taunts, the accusations. That's amazing. Head snapping up, Hitoshi came face to face with the green-haired boy who was literally jumping up and down, chattering a mile a minute. That's a perfect tool for heroics. Can you imagine? You can stop villains without even having to fight. You could make them arrest themselves. And just think about hostage negotiations. If it worked through a phone, you could save people so easily. Izuku just kept going on, listing out numerous uses for the quirk to the point that he was barely understandable, arms flailing through the air. A small huff came from the other end of the couch, and Hitoshi looked to see Katsuki smiling. It was a tad bit feral, but clearly happy. That settles it. The blonde declares with a grin. You have to join our agency. I can beat up villains, Deku can outthink them, and you can stop them before they hurt people. The grin became a tad more feral. Then I can beat them up some more. Quietly, Hitoshi asked, You aren't afraid? With a snort, Katsuki immediately with no hesitation replied, Hell no. Hitoshi felt like crying yet again that night. Hisashi patted the boy's shoulder, giving him a bright grin as he sat his tea down. They've right, you know. It's a fantastic quirk. Ruffling the boy's hair, he added, no matter what you want to do with it, be it heroics or something else, or maybe not use it at all, that's your choice. And we'll support you the whole way. And once again, Hisashi found himself with his arms full of a sobbing child, though the crying was quieter and more like happy tears this time around. In the background of this touching moment, Izuku was still going on about Hitoshi's quirk, having dragged out an analysis notebook along with a laptop. The boy was practically vibrating in place while mumbling incoherently, clearly so far into his thinking bubble that only an act of God would drag him out. Tensai and Nemirai watched on in mild horror as the boy began to pull up files about voice-based mental quirks, including several detailed MRI scans. Mirai just let out the world's second most tired sigh. The first belonged to Naomisa for when All Might did All Might things, which is often. I shouldn't have added the marshmallows. Green Bean and Feral Children Protection Squad Grandfather Satan, good morning everyone. Hitoshi-kun is now officially in Yamada's care. We shall be working on getting him settled and such over the next few days, so Yamada may not be available as much. Grandfather Satan. Also, I would like to note that both Hitoshi and Katsuki are to be enrolled in classes here with Izuku, so I shall be working on a study schedule for them in the next few days. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. Space Aunt, oh, I hope he is adjusting well. Wine Aunt at Uncle Scremzashi, you let us know if you need any help with him, alright? Dadzawa, the cockatoo is distracted online shopping for Hitoshi, so he might not respond for a while. Also, the kid is likely going to be attached to Izuku's hip for the next few days, so I'll be able to help as well. 𝙎𝙮𝙬𝙬. Speaking of attached at the hip, 𝙎𝙮𝙬𝙬 uploaded an image, a picture of the three boys sprawled across the futon, all sleeping in weird angles and hugging each other. Why not? They literally have not moved since last night. Uncle Diglett. While adorable, that can't be a comfortable angle. Dad, we tried rearranging them. Every time we turned our backs, they ended up back like this. Papa Fortune Cookie, I still blame the marshmallows. Uncle BLD, you gave Greenie sugar after the last incident. Do you have a death wish? Papa Fortune Cookie, it was a long night, and I have many regrets. Grandfather Satan, oh. It appears we have a guest at the gates. Can someone go greet him? 𝙎𝙮𝙬𝙬, got it. Is this the welcoming or unwelcoming kind of greeting? Grandfather Satan, welcoming. Grandfather Satan, it would be best to simply take him wherever he wishes to go and not interfere. 𝙎𝙮𝙬𝙬, sounds like a bad idea, but I'm too tired to care. Uncle BLD, I have concerns. Yagi had high hopes for today. Yesterday had been very overwhelming, to say the least. The children were still sleeping on the futon. Yamada sprawled on the couch next to them looking up furniture options for young Hitoshi. Aizawa had headed out earlier to meet with Nezu about their newest charge, and Mirai was off doing something that probably involved paperwork. So, Yagi had taken it upon himself to make breakfast. Flipping another pancake, he smiled to himself at the American-style buffet he had laid out. While he cannot eat most of it, he could at least eat the pancakes, and the joy the boys would likely display would surely outweigh the disappointment of not being allowed to eat bacon. Staring at the plate of bacon, he inwardly cursed all for one once more for deciding that ripping out a chunk of his stomach was a fun activity. Shaking his head, he flipped the pancake once more. No bad thoughts, he told himself quietly. Today shall be a nice, calm day. The door to the apartment was abruptly kicked open, causing him to shriek and throw the pancake up into the air. Yamada was on his feet and braced in front of the kids in an instant, and Yagi was about to do the same until he saw who was standing there. Gran Torino. Yamada spared a glance at Yagi, still braced for a fight, somehow managing to look intimidating even while wearing his present MIC-themed pajamas, and he asked, "You know him?" "He's my teacher," Yagi insisted, though he looked visibly distressed seeing the man. "An old friend, really, practically family." The tiny old man let out a loud snort. "Oh really?" Then, he shot forward, bouncing off the far wall like an air rocket and into the kitchen where Yagi just barely was able to move the bacon before Torino landed on the counter, sliding right in front of Yagi. "If I'm family, then why the hell did I have to find out you had a son via my morning news show?" Yagi stared blankly, before shouting, "Find out I have a what?" It was at this moment that the previously flung pancake decided to unstick itself from the ceiling and fall directly on top of his head. He had high hopes for today, and he should have known better. Aizawa had come strolling in not long after, being barely fazed at the fact that he just set loose an unknown slightly feral old man on Yagi, and once Yagi had been depancakified, they quickly all gathered around the TV to see what exactly Torino was talking about. And that's how they ended up watching a clip of Yagi and Aizawa speed walking down the street, ushering along the trio of boys towards their car. The title of the clip was All Might's Secret Family. With blurry attempts to zoom in on the kids' faces, though only Katsuki's face being clear, Hitoshi's face angled down and Izuku's face and hair thankfully hidden well in his All Might hoodie. Camera picture of Aizawa and All Might next to each other, text at the bottom of the screen asking if he could possibly be All Might's spouse. "Well, that's nicer than this morning's clip," Torino griped. Yamada blankly asked, "What did this morning say?" "Symbol of peace kidnapping children." Yagi visibly slumped. "Oh, PR and Mirai are going to kill me." With an audible growl, Aizawa snapped, "They think I'm your husband." Dropping his face to his hands, he groaned. "I am never going to be able to walk down the street without paparazzi tailing me ever again." Running his hands along his face, he groans, "Those vultures are relentless." Patting his friend's shoulder, Yamada struggled to find words of encouragement. "It'll be okay, they probably won't remember in a few days." Gran Torino let out a snort. "Fat chance of that." Aizawa looked ready to say something else, only for his phone to suddenly ping. And then it pinged again. And again. He pulled it out as it continued to chime, only to look at it in horror. Oh God! He looked up to Yamoda. The Unders group chat found out. Yamoda let out a low whistle. Yeah, Imai is never going to let you live this down. Yagi glanced between them. Should we be concerned? Aizawa's phone pinged once again. He stared at it in horror. They are making memes out of it. Is that bad? Aizawa looked ready to fight him, only to be interrupted by a barely awake voice shouting, "Cool. They think I'm all Might's kid." They all looked over to see Katsuki launching himself out of the mess of blankets, hopping along as he dragged the still passed out in a sugar coma Izuku, who had a death grip on one of his legs. This caused Hitoshi to be dragged along due to Izuku's grip with his other hand, and the lavender-haired boy sat up and blearily blinked, obviously still struggling to get his bearings as he was slowly tugged along by his waist. Torino seemed to finally remember why he was there. Leaping up in the air, he tracked Yagi on the back of the head, unfazed by the man's yelp of pain. "You had 3 kids and didn't tell me." "No," Yagi insisted. "Only one of them is mine." Torino paused, before leaping up again and thwacking Yagi once more and grabbing his ear on the way down, dragging the man down to his level. "You mean the kidnapping story was right?" Seeing as how Aizawa was not going to do anything and seemed to be enjoying poor Yagi getting lectured, Yamoda decided to step in at this point. "There has been no kidnapping, and we can explain everything." Torino shot the man a scowling look, before finally relenting and letting go of Yagi's ear. "Fine then. I want some answers." "That's reasonable." Glancing at Aizawa, Yamoda suggested, "Go call Nedzu and let him know what's happening. He'll contact the others." Aizawa sighed. "Fine." Then, after a pause, he asked, "What's the chances of us not letting them know about the marriage thing?" "Show. Your face is plastered on every news network in Japan, and probably some in the US. You aren't hiding this." Green Bean and Feral Children Protection Squad. Uncle Sonic, why is the news congratulating All Might and Show for their marriage and adoption of 3 children? Uncle Shotgun, they're what? Uncle Detective, one day. Can we not just have one normal day, Toshinori? Papa Fortune Cookie. Is this part of the reason why PR is calling me asking about kidnapping accusations? Dad might, listen, I don't ask to be like this. Dadzawa, don't worry, Aizawa, I have the perfect disguise. No one will ever recognize us. Yes, your All Might merch was a wonderful disguise. Uncle Diglett. And you went along with that. Dadzawa, I am never going out in public again. Why not? They think Shouter married All Might. Dadzawa, oh no. Why not? Oh Shouter, let's talk about your love life. Dadzawa, at Space Aunt, can I take a one-way trip into a black hole? Space Aunt? No. Dadzawa, DMN it. Land down under joke, stop changing your name to Mrs. Eraserhead Mr. Brave. Meme 1 Ms. Joke, I'm sorry, what? Fatgum, okay, did not see that coming. Eraserhead, oh no. Ms. Joke, Shouter. How could you? Fatgum Meme 5 Nighteye. How did this happen? Ms. Joke, is this why you denied all my attempts to woo you? Eraserhead at Nighteye, it's the blonde oaf's fault. Ms. Joke, you could have told me you were in a relationship. Nighteye, good to know who to blame. Ms. Joke, hell, you could have just admitted you were gay. Mr. Brave, Meme 3 Fatgum, okay ouch. Mr. Brave, right. Eraserhead, I'm moving to Fing, Switzerland. Nighteye, you are not abandoning me to deal with All Might alone. Ms. Joke, wait, are you 3ATE? Eraserhead, never Fing say that word again. Nighteye, I am heading back to the apartment. Nighteye at Ms. Joke, I am asexual aromantic. Ms. Joke, okay. Ms. Joke, well back to the original couple then. Ms. Joke, Shouter. Ms. Joke, Shouter answer me. Eraserhead, I'm heading to the airport. Fatgum, Meme 7 Mr. Brave, oh that's a good one. Nighteye, Aizawa, if you leave the country, Izuku will cry. Eraserhead, God DMN it. Fatgum, Izuku. Eraserhead, none of you saw anything. And for the love of God, stop deeming me before I block you. Mr. Brave, meme for Ms. Joke, shouter, how dare you make me your other woman and not give me the deets. Ms. Joke, we could have gone bar hopping and vented about our partners to each other. Fatgum, meme 6 Ms. Joke at Eraserhead, wait no, unblock me please, it was a joke. Eraserhead has left the chat. Fatgum, well that took 2 years longer than the betting pool originally theorized. Ms. Joke, shouter no, Mr. Brave, meme 2 Rocklock, what in the actual F? It was the world's weirdest staring match, at least in Yagi's opinion. Can you even remember your own name, or are you too old for that? I can remember plenty, more than the brat who still can't spell his own name. You're nothing but a worn-out retirement home reject, says the preschool dropout brat. Wrinkly raisin man. Whiny cabbage patch doll. Only, the staring contest involved quite a few insults being slung around. Should we intervene? Yamada asked quietly from where he sat at the kitchen table with Izuku and Hitoshi. Hitoshi seemed to be faring a little better now, munching away at his food as he intently watched Katsuki squaring off with the retired pro. Izuku, however, looked like he was suffering the child equivalent of being hungover, his face pressed down into the table as he worked up the energy to eat. Yagi grimaced as Torino whispered something with an overly feral grin, and Katsuki let out an overly affronted gasp, hands crackling as he screeched, "You take that back." Torino simply cackled gleefully as he called out, "Or what? You going to fight me with those sparklers of yours?" The ensuing shout from Katsuki sounded near inhuman, and the crackling from his hands just grew louder. "The two of them together is certainly a fire hazard," Yagi muttered, but made no move to intervene. Quite honestly, he was just happy to have Torino's attention off of himself. Then, a snort sounded from the kitchen, and Yagi turned to see Aizawa with a pot of coffee in one hand and a fire extinguisher in the other. "I'm sure everything will be fine," the man muttered. His phone started going off again on the counter, and Aizawa glanced down at it, grimaced, then promptly sat the fire extinguisher on the counter in order to pick up his phone and casually drop it in the near-full coffee pot. Yagi did not know how to reply to that. Yamada simply asked a hesitant, "You good man, I have blocked 5 burner phones joke has acquired." The man lifted the pot with his now useless cell phone and took a drink of it. "This will suffice till I get a new number." "Okay then." Yamada pulled out his own phone. "I'm letting the green bin chat know that you aren't mentally available right now." Aizawa flashed him a thumbs up with his free hand before downing the rest of the coffee, the phone nearly smacking him in the face in the process. Yagi's attention wandered back to his teacher and Katsuki, and he could not help but audibly sigh as he saw Torino dodge out of the way of sprinting Katsuki, causing the young boy to run face first into the wall. "Am I allowed to not be mentally available right now?" Yamada didn't even look up from his phone. "Not until Nighteye is back. You aren't leaving me alone with this crowd." "Fair enough." Green Bean and Feral Children Protection Squad. Uncle Screm, so show is currently mentally unavailable right now. Uncle Screm, Yagi is very close to that point as well. Space Aunt, what happened this time? Uncle Screm, kind of a continuation of the marriage thing, but also Yagi's small yet terrifying mentor is here, and show reached his limit due to Ms. Joke. Why not? Do I need to have another talk with Fukado about harassment? Uncle Screm, considering show was being bombarded via multiple burner phones within the space of a half an hour to the point he dropped his phone in the coffee pot. Probably. Why not? Good to know. Anyone available to give me an alibi? Uncle Shotgun, what alibi? We've been watching rom-coms in my apartment all day. And will continue to do so well into the morning hours or however long it takes to hide a body. Uncle Shotgun, metaphorically speaking. Why not? A man after my own heart. Grandfather Satan, now Kiyoma, I do have to ask that you postpone any possibly illegal activities until a bit later in the day. Due to recent events, I am having to call an emergency staff meeting in the next half hour. Why not? Am I really needed at this? Grandfather Satan, well, I suppose it should be fine for you to miss the meeting. I mostly need the parental figures in the chat. I have some solutions that I think will be beneficial for everyone in the long run. Uncle BLD, that sounds ominous. Uncle Screm, easy for you to say. You aren't the one who has to attend this meeting. Uncle BLD, I know my limits and raising a child is definitely the pinnacle of beyond those limits. Grandfather Satan, actually, I was going to request you attend, Vlad, due to something that has come to my attention. At Uncle Diglett as well. Uncle BLD. God DMN it. Uncle Diglett, SHIT Grandfather Satan. Now then, I expect to see you all within half an hour. Grandfather Satan at Papa Fortune Cookie, do you believe you can make it as well? Papa Fortune Cookie, I am almost back already. PR is handling most of the press inquiries, but I assume you have a cover story devised already. Grandfather Satan, but of course. Uncle Screm, who is going to watch the kids during the meeting if the dad trio and I have to go? Grandfather Satan, Gran Torino should be able to handle them for an hour or so. Uncle Screm. He currently has Katsuki in a headlock. Grandfather Satan, I am sure he has his reasons. Uncle Diglett, this family was a mistake. Uncle BLD, this isn't a family, this is a DMN cult. Half an hour later, Uncle BLD, you know, when I called this place a cult, I was joking. Uncle BLD, yet Nedzu just had to make it literal. Space aunt, what? Why not? Maybe I should have stayed for the meeting. So, let me get this straight, Aizawa began slowly, pinching the bridge of his nose. You want to turn UA into a self-sustaining group with all of the essential staff and their immediate family living on site. Precisely. Nedzu chirped, tail swishing excitedly. Also, Khan, I would appreciate it if you stopped calling this a cult in the group chat. Vlad nearly dropped his phone. You aren't even looking at the chat, how do you know that? Nedzu simply smiled at the pro. Vlad put his phone away. I mean, Yamada began hesitantly, scratching at his head. Vlad is kind of right. The principal simply sighed. You humans over-exaggerate situations. I simply want to keep my people and their families safe. Aizawa let out a snort. Admit it, you are building a cult out of reach of the commission. And UA is your weird-ass gray area that they can't legally touch. I still do not know how you managed that, Nighteye remarked, side-eyeing the principal. Nedzu was not even fazed. Let's just say it involved chess and a moderate amount of blackmail. Nighteye squinted. Possibly a violation or two of the Geneva Conventions, but who is counting? Yamada stuck his hand up in the air. Me. I'm counting. Seriously, boss, what the F? That's another thing to bring up with my therapist, Majima muttered as he slumped down into his chair. Yagi timidly raised a hand. I thought we were supposed to be discussing how to convince the press that Aizawa and I are not married. Aizawa perked up. Yes. That. How do we do that as quickly as possible? I'm not against breaking stuff. What in the world would you need to break? Majima asked in confusion. The law, legs, the photographer responsible's will to live. Jesus Christ, Vlad muttered in horror. No one listened to him, because he should honestly expect this by now. Nedzu chuckled to himself. No breaking will be necessary, Aizawa-kun. My plan is actually far more simple. Nighteye straightened in his seat. And that would be... Play along. Silence. And then Aizawa slammed his hands on the table and stood up. I'm running away to live in the woods. Izuku will cry, came the automatic reply of everyone in the room. Aizawa silently sat back down. Shaking his head, Nedzu tutted softly. Honestly, Aizawa-kun. You have such a flair for the dramatics. While his response is extreme, Yagi began cautiously, slowly inching away from Aizawa who sat next to him. I would have to say, this is not a very good plan. Yagi-kun, just think of it this way, Nedzu elaborated. You will be having to have your surgery to fix your organs soon, and thus you would be disappearing from the spotlight for multiple weeks as you recover. What better cover story than to say that All Might is taking time with his family after having your identities revealed? Nighteye pinched the bridge of his nose. Nedzu. Anything would be better. Because this isn't something that can just be claimed and then done within a few weeks. All of Japan would think they were a real couple unless they were to suddenly get divorced, which would likely make Aizawa one of the most hated men in all of Japan. I don't care if people hate me, Izuku. God damn it. Besides, Vlad added irritably. It's not like anyone would believe that Aizawa was husband material. Excuse you, Aizawa cut in, glaring at his co-worker. I would make a fantastic husband. Vlad blinked. Aizawa. You hate people. So. You hate everyone except Izuku. Your point. How can you be a good husband if you hate your spouse? Aizawa looked at Yagi. His tolerable. Yagi looked like he might cry. That is the kindest thing you have ever said to me. What is happening here? Majima muttered quietly to Yamada. I think this is the closest Sho has ever gotten to flirting. Red eyes snapped to Yamada in an instant. Never mind, I didn't say anything. Shouter has never flirted in his life. Nighteye let out a long, tired sigh. Let's just agree to put a pin in this while I discuss the pros and cons with the PR department tonight. Honestly, no matter what we do, conspiracy theorists will likely not believe us. Hence why we should simply take advantage of Nedzu. I have a lot of respect for you, Nighteye interjected, his voice stern. But I can confidently say that you are the last being I would come to for advice on how to handle human marital issues. Yagi protested, there are no marital issues. You left dishes piled up in the sink again, Aizawa chimed in. That sounds like a marital issue, Aizawa, please, we are not married, I am aware, but I am also aware that if you keep leaving dishes in the sink, I will steal your kneecaps in your sleep. It's my apartment. That Izuku regularly stays in. I keep it clean otherwise, debatable, and you have no room to complain, considering you constantly use my credit card. You can afford it. Please. I am begging, Nighteye deadpanned, staring in defeat as the two continued to bicker. Someone change the subject. Well, I might as well ask before the suspense kills me, even though it's likely going to make me need therapy with Majima, Vlad began, his tone resigned because he already knew that he was not going to like what was about to happen. But why am I and Majima here with other parental figures? Oh, that is easy, Nedzu replied cheerfully. We have more kidnapped children. Majima slumped down into his chair with a sigh and Vlad smacked his head on the table. I'm texting the detective, Nighteye blandly replied as he pulled out his phone, all while Yagi started to hack up a lung. Yamada just laughed at them. Aizawa did not really care until a thought hit him. FTT. Everyone turned in his direction as he declared in horror, all my photos of Izuku were on my old phone. Vlad hit his head on the table again. Green Bean and Feral Children Protection Squad Uncle Detective, why did Nighteye just text me that Nedzu started a cult and kidnapped multiple children? Several people are typing.